The first item on the committee of the whole open session agenda is the audit committee meeting open session report. Now we get the official report. Again, I'll turn it over to our trustee, Marjorie Adam, to speak to the item, please. And there are recommendations that she will be bringing.
There are, yes. So the meeting opens, if you've, Trustee Kaiser has been a member of this committee. You open and you do two little things at the beginning, like approve agenda, then you go and close, and then you go and open, and it's very complicated. But one thing that is done at the September meeting of the year is the election of a chair of the committee. Now, as you know, I've been the chair for a little while, too long. And this item is misaligned with the election because in November now, there will be the inaugural meeting of the board with some new members present, and no one has any idea who's going to be on that audit committee for the rest of the year, right? And so our committee recommended that we change that process just for the present and re-elected me as the chair, and I wasn't terribly prepared because I thought somebody else would be doing it. Re-elected me as the chair for that one meeting because the next meeting is in November after the inaugural board meeting, when you will know who's going to be on that committee, because there are only there are 3 trustees, right? Yeah, and so there are 3 trustees, and maybe the other 2 will be doing something else. Who knows? We don't know what everybody's going to be doing. And so I was the chair again, just for that one meeting. And so now I will continue. And so in the open session, we looked at the annual report of the audit activities, and there will be a recommendation at the bottom. And so most of it you have already heard about, but the internal audit activities in the closed session, and the item 4 there, 2022-23 regional internal audit plan. So every year there's a kind of rolling plan to do 2 major reviews each year, and sometimes they get postponed but we can look ahead and say, well, we'll do that this year, and then next year, and then the next year we'll do the other things. So this year we received a report on all the regional activities of the audit team. The audit team, as you know, does auditing work, internal audit for all 9 school boards of Eastern Ontario, and they treated us to a lengthy account of all the things they've been doing all over, and that was interesting. And the second thing, we approved the audit plan for this board for the coming year, and there are 2 items on it. The first one, one of them was delayed. There was originally to be this year a critical personnel positions that's been postponed till the following year by the request of management. And then the 2 new ones for this year, the first one is for safe schools, focus on the capacity, processes, some systems in place to communicate, identify, I can't do this freehand, identify, protect, and respond to issues relating to students' health with a focus on well-being, mental health, and bullying. So that audit is going ahead this year. You might wonder how you do an audit on things like that, but I guess they have their means. Second one is by the request of management, and it relates to office workload. This is a request from management to assess the alignment of current staffing, work responsibilities, and the funding formula. They recognize that they will need resources from human resources and acknowledge that the HR department will again be heavily taxed with collective agreement negotiations going on this year. But nonetheless, they are going to attempt to do this audit this year. I think that the superintendent might like to speak to that one.
The school office?
The workload, the office workload and responsibilities.
Yes, it's something that we were interested in for some time, even before the pandemic, which is when it first came up, because we have the funding formula, of course, that we have, and then we have the office workload, and we have some small schools and large schools. And so we were just really looking to see what's the work that needs to be done, what's the work that needs to be done by these people, and how is it in alignment with the funding that we receive. So we are looking forward to, although recognizing that most of that information will have to come from the HR department. So it's a bit of a balance when we have negotiation years like this.
So are there any questions on any of that? In that case, I would like to move the two motions relating to the two items on here. The first motion is, shall I do them both together, Chair? You want to do them one at a time or both together?
They are listed here as two separate motions, at least what I have in front of me.
All
So
right, the
let's
first
do it that way. Yeah.
Motion then is that the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee receive the 2021-22 annual report. That should be not the Audit Committee, that should be that the Renfrew County District School Board, isn't that so? I mean, it's not the committee, the committee did approve it, but I think that we are not the committee now, we are the board. So could we strike the words Audit Committee there? Am I correct?
So I don't see in the motion Audit Committee. Motion I have reads that the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee, A, receives the 21-22 annual report on internal audit activities, and B, receives the signed 21-22 regional internal audit team charter for information.
Yes, that was what we passed at our board meeting.
Is that motion okay, Trustee Adam? Is that?
We are the board, so I think that the board is passing this motion now. I'm sorry, I never noticed this when I was preparing the meeting.
Feels it odd, the word audit committee is not required in that sentence.
I think we don't need the words
Oh,
audit.
I see, that the Renfrew County District School Board, period.
Yeah.
In both of them, because
Okay.
these motions were just imported from the committee meeting.
So then we would like the motion amended. Shelley? Think you do that?
Yeah, I'm just kind of questioning it though.
So it's the board receiving both of these
Correct.
reports, right? It's not the audit committee receiving the reports, I think is
But
what,
it's the audit committee's recommendation to the board.
so then, but the way it reads now, I think Trustee Adam is correct. It's not. Because it's not the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee receiving either of those two, A or B. It's the Renfrew County District School Board. So where would audit committee go in then, Shelley, if you think it needs to be there? Where would you put it? Could it
I
be,
feel it's there as is.
It's okay as it is? I'm sure everybody knows what it means, so I'm not terribly concerned.
I'm not saying I'm correct, but that's how.
Trustee Morris?
I think Trustee Adam is correct because the original motion that was presented at the audit committee. So the audit committee is the one receiving it. Now the audit committee is moving the recommendation of the board, and it's the board that's receiving it.
Director, perhaps for some clarification.
There, the second motion is a good example of, I think, what you're talking about, where the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommends to the board for approval. So in a way, if you need to fix the first stem, it would be that the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommends the RCDSB.
Receive
That second example clarifies, I think,
Clarifies.
Yes.
what you're talking
That
about.
stays this.
I'm sorry, I did not notice this in advance to have it fixed.
So
If you needed to add it.
So
to be
that-
Clear.
we would
You could use that.
ask for an amendment that the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommends for approval. A, to receive the 21-22 annual report, and B, to receive the signed 21-22 regional. Does that make sense?
That the audit committee recommend for the approval by the RCDSB.
For the RCDSB.
That the RCDSB does this and that.
To read that again, because it would have to be the same for both the first motion and the second one.
Okay, yes, okay. Sorry about this.
So it could be that the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommends that the RCDSB receives. and
Okay.
receives.
It should be received, not received.
Yeah, receive, yeah.
We never have, they always do it. I'm sorry, that was meant to be sort of okay.
So the requested amendment is that the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommends for approval to the RCDSB,
Well,
A and B.
I don't think it's,
This recommends for approval.
Recommends for approval. That's how they have it in the second motion.
I think the first motion was just receiving for information.
Could just say receives.
Right, but I think what the way it reads now is that it's the audit committee. It's not the audit committee, it's the board that's receiving the information. So if we follow what I think I heard, if we just change that first line that the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommends for approval, and then you change it to receive and to receive. If you want grammatically correct, if maybe Trustee Morris can help us with that. But you know what I'm saying? So I think Trustee Adams' first suggestion is correct, that it reads that the audit committee is receiving the information when it's not. It's the board receiving the information. So the board is passing the motion on the information that's received, not the audit committee.
You, Mr. Chair, if you remove the for approval, if following along the lines of what you're saying, that the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommends the RCDSB receive without the approval, because I think what Superintendent Barnes
Sure.
is saying, it's not so much approval, it's information. But if you're saying here, you're clarifying the audit committee recommends the board receive and receive.
Okay, could you read that again for us? Because that sounded right.
That the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommends the RCDSB receive and receive. So that
All right.
approval on this one, but I understand why there's approval on this.
Well, no, because receives is on A and B, right?
Yeah, sorry, the receive.
You don't put that in the.
Correct.
Yeah, you stopped
The
that.
Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommends the RCDSB.
Dot, dot.
Trustee Adam, you okay with that?
Yes, thank you.
So Trustee Adams put the motion on the table as amended. I need a seconder for that motion. Trustee Humphries, thank you. Any further questions? All in favor? And that first recommendation is passed. Thank you. Trustee Adam, you want to bring the second recommendation to the floor, please?
That the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommend for approval the 2022-23 Regional Internal Audit Plan as presented in Appendix A. And as I described.
Good with that? And I need a seconder for that motion. Trustee Edge, thank you. Further questions, comments? Everyone good? All,
Sorry, was there an appendix A though attached?
No, again, that's from the Audit
From the
Committee.
audit committee. Yeah, it was
Okay.
attached to the audit committee. So
Okay.
I think you could just leave that off. 2022-23 Regional Internal Audit Plan as presented.
Remove the last
Okay.
few
Yeah,
words.
Yeah.
then the
Just-
amendment is to remove in Appendix A.
Yeah.
Okay with that, Shelley?
Yep. Thank you.
So Trustee Adam, could you just reread the amended motion, please?
The Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommends for approval the 2022-23 Regional Internal Audit Plan, period.
Plan, period. Okay,
That wasn't presented here.
right. I think I already got a seconder, did I? I think so. No, did I?
Nick Edge.
Yes. All in favor? Thank you. Carried.
After your munificent words of praise, Chair, then I messed up my recommendations again. But I just assumed they were right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just in future, to make it nice and simple, right at the start, following are the recommendations. You don't need to be saying that it's being recommended by the audit committee, just that, for example, the second one, that the Renfrew County District School Board approve this because it's already being recommended. And we're getting collapsed in all the excess verbiage, so just nice and simple.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda in the Committee of the Whole open session is the year-to-date financial status. I'll be turning it over to Superintendent Barnes, and I understand, see that Tammy, our manager, has joined us as well. No recommendations. Superintendent Barnes, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, this is much of what we do is cyclical in nature, and so this is the time of year where we have had our year end. It ended August 31st. And so even though we're starting the new year and we're excited about all of the things that it brings, we have to tidy up what we did last year. And so this is our check-in to see how on forecast we are for what we thought were our best thinking last year at revised estimates, and then we've done our check-in. So Tammy has prepared the report, and we'll go over the highlights with you.
Hello. Okay, so this is at the end of August and it's on the cash basis. So it's before we've done all our year-end adjustments. So comparing to the same point in time last year, we are up 0.3% to 99.1% spent of our forecasted budget. So this shows we're on forecast. Still, the things that we still have to do, the analysis and such, journal entries for wages not paid until September pay dates, payables for invoices not yet received. GSNs still need to be finalized and audited. We need to verify that the expenses are charged to the appropriate envelopes or lines that you'll see in the expenses. We need to review our miscellaneous revenues and all our PPF revenues to make sure that they're fully spent, and if not, we may have to return those or defer them. Review for capital expenses. So sometimes there's capital stuff included in here that we need to remove and capitalize. We're still, their transportation consortium is working on their year end, so we need that in order to finish up our year end. And then other year end accruals for auditing and legal, etc. So the next page of the report is just the summary of where we assumed we would be at the end of the year. So I just wanted to highlight at line 11, when we first did our budget, we thought we'd have a deficit of 350. When we revised it later in the year, we assumed a forecast of a deficit of 650. And that was for some extra supports that we needed in the system in the new year. So I'm gonna skip over the revenue page because it hasn't changed since the last time and move on to the expense page, which is the budget assessment piece and the risk assessment. So I'm going to be looking at columns E and F, where this shows the percent of forecast being spent comparing to the percent actual spent last year at this point in time. So line 2 will stand out, which is our sick leave and special leave account. We're showing 20% overspent. Compared to last year at this point in time, we were just slightly over, which would have been some journal entries that needed to clean up to get it to the 100%. So we are over. We did project extra sick leave but in the budget, but it still was not enough. So that sick leave includes our classroom teachers, our EAs, and our ECEs. So it's all anybody in the classroom. So I haven't drilled down, and I want to talk to HR to see what reports we can get so we can kind of get a feel of how many days that was. Because it would partly be too because of our prorates. So where a teacher or ECE or EA, if they're covering for somebody for more than 10 days, I think some of them are 11, depending on the group, would get their grid rate. So not only do we have more absence days, we would have more days at that higher rate that would throw this over compared to other years, right? So we all know it's COVID, but it'd be nice to drill down a little bit and get a little more details on that. And I'm sure when we see the sick leave report that we get done by SPCI, that we'll get even more details, and that other boards are going to be very similar to us. So that one was a very hard one to predict. So then if we go to line 4, which is classroom computers. If you note, last year we showed 158%. So what we showed over, it's because we capitalized some of these expenses and we haven't pulled those out yet. So we're not overspent. By the time we pull these capital out, we'll be good. The textbooks and supplies, actually the next 3, 5, 6, and 7, we're showing underspent. So those are where some of our grants are, our school budgets, and some of our department curriculum budgets and stuff. So there is some savings in there that I'm seeing, but there's some grants that are unspent that will be sent back. So that's where we need to do that drill down, is in those pieces. Everything else is fairly on track. continuing ed is showing overspent, but some of that's summer programs where we didn't have the budget in there. So where we're getting some grants, or we got some grants that will cover that overage. So that's some more drill down that we'll be doing. Student transportation at line 14 is showing more than last year. Some of that's timing of payments, but it's also the fuel escalation payouts that were done this year. It was approximately $600,000 and we will get that grant to cover off that. So field transportation will balance itself out. So overall at line 19, we're showing at 99.1% of the forecasted budget. So we'll see how that all plays out. But it's looking like we're on forecast.
Any questions? Trustee Gannett?
Just one regarding the sick leave and special leave last year, it's up 14.2%. You're alluding to the fact that when there's more research done, that other boards very well could be in the same or similar situation.
Yeah.
Just when you do find out that information, moving forward, whenever that is, I'd just like to know that. Just sort of as a baseline data.
Yeah, and I think we don't get usually that till the new year, by the time they get that all the analysis done.
In a memo too, if you want.
Yep.
It's not an item here.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Jen or Tammy on the up-to-date financial status? Seeing none, there are no recommendations. Thank you very much. As always, Tammy, thank you.
That's pretty good.
So the next item,
Danny.
oops,
Sorry. She's too fast. Oh. Thank you so much. As always.
Thank you.
It's so good.
the next item, there was a nice package in our agenda section today, sorry, last week when it was sent out. This item is the secondary school review. And I'll Director, do I turn over to you or do I turn over to Superintendent Kuzno to start with?
We're gonna actually, a couple of quick comments, just my thanks, and then I will turn over to
Okay.
Superintendent Kuzno and Superintendent Riddell just to speak to it. Just a huge thanks to senior staff for their work particularly, and to Shelley for her work on coordinating these agendas, to senior staff for their efforts and their wisdom around trying to land guiding prompts for a discussion, which is never an easy topic. I did want to share with the Board of Trustees, and then again, I will turn it over to Superintendents Kuzno and Riddell on this to speak to the adult and continuing education session and the secondary sessions respectively. The first attachment you'll notice on the back of the cover sheet is really a confirmation of the dates, times. I am very grateful we were able to land to what we had committed to, which were all of these sessions for our secondary schools between the two Thanksgivings, Canadian and American, which is what we had reached out in the end of the summer to our secondary principals for. You'll note the adult and continuing education one is a half-day session for that staff. We are releasing that staff for the secondary schools. We have a slightly different plan. So again, we were able to meet the timelines. We have 2 additional dates we are not really revealing, which were backup dates in case something happens here, but we're not revealing them for fear that somebody jumps on that date as a better option now. So we're sort of locked in, but there are a couple of late November dates in the event we had some unforeseen in these next eight sessions.
Snow day or something.
Yeah, exactly. Snow day's a good example, exactly. So over to Superintendent Kuzno, thank you.
Thanks, Pino. I'll just start briefly with the adult and cont ed consultation that'll take place this coming Thursday. It'll be half day. We are essentially not running programs on that morning and bringing staff in, even though they are not day schools and operate very differently. We wanted to take this opportunity to meet with them, and given that both Anne Gagan, the principal, and myself are new to the portfolio, we figured it'd be a great opportunity to engage in conversations. And you'll notice the prompts are different for adult and con ed, but it is an opportunity for them to share what they feel has worked well and what evidence this is based on, as well as how they situate themselves with respect to the system at large. So how does adult and con ed exist as an extension and part of the larger district and our larger mission? What are some of the needs they feel are out there in the community based on the clients that are coming in, and recognizing that will be one perspective on some of those needs, as well as how we can connect and meet some of those potentially unmet needs. We also want to engage them in conversations around the inspired learning vision and what this could look like for our adults. For example, the global competencies that are not unique to our adolescent learners, but are germane as well to our adult learners. And how do we ensure that we have pathways for all adult students in terms of a complement, an extension of what we do in day school. So it will look different, but it is an opportunity for us to listen to their feedback. And certainly being new to the role, it'll provide an opportunity really to get a sense of where we're at with adult and con ed, knowing that down the road, well, that will be an area that we will want to review. But for now, it's more of getting their perspective on how they can help and be an extension of day school programs. So this will be this Thursday morning. Over to you, Kristen.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Kuzno. So a really exciting time, and I certainly know that you just went through the elementary school review and all of the great opportunities for students in that regard for French immersion. For this, so we are going to all of the secondary sites and to Valor, the JK to 12. And a similar format in looking at 5 different prompts. The staff will have the prompts ahead of time because we want it to be a very reflective process as well as an engaging one the day of. So the dates are set. They're full days for all of the secondary sites. In the morning, it's an opportunity to have greetings from the board. It's an opportunity for the director to speak, to set the context for the day, as well as the superintendent of education for that school. There are 5 different prompts, and the way that it is structured for staff that day is during teachers or EA's prep period. They can visit the library. There will be coffee and snacks as well, just to make it a warm, inviting atmosphere. Then there will be prompts that are throughout the room. They will probably be on Post-its. There will be some computers with Jamboards to collect some of the information as well. But all teachers will be cycling through for 37.5 minutes. So we want everyone participating. We certainly want to hear their voice, their ideas, and next steps for this review. The teachers will be given an on-call for that period. So yeah, that's a big win, and thank you to Superintendent Poirier and the HR department for that. But what we're really looking at is the voice. So the 5 different things that we're looking at: program, pathways. So the pathways for university, pathways for college, for apprentice, for community living programs, for workplace. And what pathways does the student have coming into the school, and what pathways will they continue to have in grade 11 and grade 12? We want to make sure that students are the drivers in their destination and that there is really a vibrant pathway for them all. We also want to hear about how de-streaming has gone, particularly in grade 9 math last year. So certainly an important shift that took place with having students who would traditionally might go into an applied program. So it's students in an applied program, students in an academic, but this is all of the students together. And then really the pillars for de-streaming, looking at that culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. So wanting to connect to student identity, their lived experience, and what they can contribute in terms of their own life experience. The universal design. So looking at ways in which the curriculum is taught, the engagement of the class, and really a lot of universal design is just the student's experience in that class. So it can be the way the class is structured. It can be the types of task, choice of the tasks. And that folds into differentiated instruction. And again, just being responsive to the needs of all students. Then looking at, having that breadth of programming and certainly that collaboration of all students in de-streaming in grade 9 for now. And then looking where the ministry is going to go with grade 10. When students get to grade 11 and 12, it's they who are making the decisions for what they want to pursue and keeping those pathways vibrant. Some might want to pursue the workforce, some might want to do college, some might want to pursue university, but they're all viable and they're all supported and all are, important in terms of the student's own learning needs. The next is initiatives for student success, and certainly Superintendent Smith, when she was assistant principal last year, did tremendous work in this regard. But looking more specifically, what are student success teams doing at a school? How are they differentiating or individualizing the curriculum or tasks for students who are in those, in an SST section? Looking at their achievement, looking at ways that additional opportunities are provided, looking at how assessments are designed and how they're responsive to student needs. And then looking at how we're tracking and reporting achievement within those classes. So looking at more ways in which we can incorporate data and the like. The next subheading is experiential learning opportunities, and I'm thrilled with this district in terms of the vibrancy that's provided in this regard. But through experiential learning opportunities, so ways in which, taking out of, for lack of a better word, the traditional classroom, how kids can engage in learning outside of the classroom, learning, it could be a class just going outside or a class to the community center or a variety of different partnerships with community members, but looking at key competencies in terms of the global competencies that Superintendent Cousineau mentioned, because we want to equip kids with, being good collaborators, critical thinkers, communicators, and so more of this interchange of learning and experiential opportunities will help with that. We also want to foster innovation and creativity, and we need to move beyond the traditional classroom in order to engage our students. And of course, just with literacy and numeracy, but different ways for students to acquire key literacy and numeracy skills to be successful in life. The virtual learning in environments. So looking at blended learning environments that we are providing, and certainly there were a lot of learning gains that took place during COVID in terms of kids becoming more digitally fluent. We know that they all like electronics, but there's different ways in which they can use them, but looking at kind of the learning gains from COVID. Also looking at, what schools are offering in terms and what we're offering as a system for e-learning and for VLE or for virtual learning environment. And then looking at, the online requirement for graduation. So students who, are pursuing that, opting in, and then certainly looking at the data that will opt out, but who better to learn than for the voice of students. The last is transitions to and from secondary school. So some of this will be school configurations as well. We have a couple, some 7 to 12 models, some JK to 12 models, some 9 to 12 models. So looking at transitions and support, ensuring that students are prepared for transitions into the senior grades, such as 9 to 12, looking at the mental health and well-being that students have as well. And part of this is also post-secondary transitions that will take place, and it connects back well to all the initiatives, particularly to the program pathway, but students being equipped to make decisions for the future, and more importantly, that they really are in a pathway that they want to pursue. So collecting or listening to the voice of staff, and at lunch, it's an opportunity for students to come down. So we're just deciding how many students can come down, but it's an opportunity to sit with school staff, to sit with trustees, to sit with superintendents, and just to have a conversation about listening to the voice of students in these areas and taking that feedback very seriously to ensure that student voice is paramount in this pursuit. So it's a really engaging day. It's it's a regular day, but it's not a long day because it will be an energetic forum, and part of we're presenting a tentative agenda and prompts. Schools will be presenting this tomorrow to our secondary vice principals and principals, as well as our elementary principals and vice principals, for them to know. They'll get the prompts ahead of time. They can have these discussions with class, or with, well, they can with their students, certainly, and they can have them with their staff. And then that day is really an opportunity to listen, to learn, and to collaborate with some next steps.
Thank you. Questions, trustees? Trustee Adam?
Chair, I'm interested that students are going to be invited to come and talk with this august group also, but are there other opportunities for students to comment on what they think about the pathways, for example, for themselves? Or is this going to be the only opportunity for students to connect with the secondary school review?
So right now, when this is presented tomorrow, that'll be an opportunity for vice principals and principals to bring that forward, certainly with say their student council or different groups within the school want to collect that voice ahead of time. Myself and the assistant principal Krista Rakowski are going to the student senate next week, and that will be an opportunity for the student senate to bring that forward to their peers and to collect that information as well. So it's a leadership opportunity for student senate to collect the voices of their students, because that's why we're here.
And just to follow up on that, just you wouldn't have been here for that, but we got a sort of a very positive recommendation from the student senate last year in terms of senators in each school being involved in these types of things. So if you could just make sure that the student senator is fully engaged in whatever level they want, because I think we need to follow up on that commitment we made last year with that recommendation. It wasn't really a recommendation. Well, it was a recommendation. Yeah. Any other questions? Trustee Humphries.
Just a couple of things. Looks like it's going to be a very busy day. So to help me understand the timing, so if we look at the agenda, basically that agenda is done 4 times during the day. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the timing is going to be tricky. Make sure everybody kind of keeps on their time point. Right? That's going to be tricky for sure. I'm glad that the prompts will be out ahead of time. I think that will help as well. And is the agenda itself sort of out ahead of time as well, so that staff know that their time is limited, right? So they have to make the best use of that time. I guess that's just what I wanted to clarify as well. But I think it looks good. I like the prompts. It's going to be a lot of conversation there for sure. So looking forward to it.
Thank you, Director.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I think Superintendent Boyer maybe add to this or comment here. One of the things we did talk a little bit about yesterday, and one of the things we'll bring tomorrow, is whether we do a bit of a voluntary welcome before the day starts, to give that front end context of about 15 minutes to anyone who would like to hear it, so that it reduces the amount as people come in and turns their 55-minute into as much of a 75-minute as possible. we did sort of bounce that idea around and we'll run it by our principals tomorrow. The other one that I'll add to Superintendent Kuzno and Riddell's comments is that we'll have a thought exchange happening that will probably launch slightly separately through the Student Senate, so we can have the Student Senate come up with their own version of it, and then one for the educators. We had talked a lot in these prompts about whether we would have one general one or a series of specific ones. We went with the specific ones because we think we got more information out to the system to comment on. But Superintendent Poirier had a really great overarching one that might be the thought exchange. The issue is we didn't write it down, so the key.
Working on it.
Going back to what it was very succinct and very tight, and it was excellent about education. And we're just going to maybe use that one for the thought exchange that allows people beyond the day to comment on any capacity well beyond that session, because I appreciate the comments made by Superintendent Riddell that it's a busy, but it'll be an exciting day. And there may be things that pop into people's minds as they reflect a day later, that evening, a week later, that will just leave some time open for that capture.
Go ahead, Superintendent Poirier. Yep.
Just to follow up on the conversation, I did just meet today with OSSTF as attached to a different meeting, but just wanted to let you know that they're really receptive about the opportunity. They appreciated the fact that we were going to include an opportunity for all members to be able to participate. I did inform them that we would be looking at a voluntary start in the morning and that people could come to that, and they understood that. And that over lunch, as well as after school, we may just leave the room and space open for people who want to drift back in. And they agreed that some people would likely want to stay for the 75 minutes, but the contractual piece is the mandatory is the 37.5 minutes with the recognition of an APA credit for that. Again, very appreciative that we would consider doing that as well to ensure that all their voices were there. I also feel that in terms of, their discussion too, they too were already thinking about that, thinking about speaking to their members about how do we look at this opportunity to have our voice shared. And so I feel it's a really collaborative venture that we will have with OSSTF in this situation. And hopefully that can help with the tight timeline, Susan, because they're aware that information will soon come. The principals will send that out and they'll be discussing it with people too.
Trustee Humphries?
I just had one quick follow-up. So are we capturing any input from the secretarial staff, the custodians? Is that going to come through on thought exchange, or I'm just wondering about that, because I'm assuming they're not necessarily, I guess they could be if they wish to come, they could, but we're not backfilling for them, as my understanding.
No, it would be really difficult for us to be able to do that during a school day such as this. On their break, they would be welcome to attend or a complete thought exchange. I'm open, it's not my direction, but what I had suggested at exec the other day is that, once we have all of these pieces, if there's certain aspects related more to the implementation that would impact, their work, their role, we of course could go and get further input from them in a different structure. But to pull off a big day such as the one we have planned, and especially with shortages as we know we have, we think what we're doing right now is probably all we could tax the building with. We will have some backfill for teachers in case there are teachers who are away for sports, and there would normally be on calls to cover, but we'll have supply teachers who could do that. And we will backfill the administrators so that they can be fully present throughout the entire day. And also the discussion with OSSTF was if there were some people away, because we're putting out the prompts ahead, they could certainly be invited to share their ideas with their principal ahead, or we have thought exchange, different mechanisms. I think starting that communication early before the actual day will get as many voices as possible.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Just before I get to trustee boards, so all of the sessions are open to all of trustees? Is that the way? Because that's the way it was at the elementary. Or are you just looking for the local trustee?
We're through you, Mr. Chair, we're looking for the local trustee for their schools, partly because it was challenging to coordinate with people's schedules. One of the things that we'll also make clear to our at our meeting of senior admin tomorrow is the dates were specifically set up to allow the current trustee to come, and in some cases, if it's an identified individual that's taking over, to allow that timing so that the trustee and the next trustee would come who might be involved in the decision making. So we kind of had to coordinate this based on who was available, but it would be the local trustee. And the way it seems to have worked out, I think we've covered most trustees. If not, please let Shelley know. But we scheduled it that way for the local.
Sure.
And the local speaks to it at the end of the day.
And-
You'll see on the agenda.
And then, so Opiongo is a shared school. There's
Exactly.
3 of us, which
Yes,
I
all three would be,
would be welcome to come to.
yeah.
Or do we just flip a coin? No, it's rock, paper, scissors, or Mike, or
We'll
if
figure
I
it
know how to play rock, paper, scissors. Okay, thanks for that. And then, so Brian, trustee Morris, yeah, you
Thank
had.
you very much. Do we anticipate that teachers would split, maybe half of them come the first half and of the time period, and then the others in that particular period come the second half? And the ones who come the second half, then they miss some of the introduction, like the context set and the explanation of format.
I'm gonna turn this one over to Superintendent Poye, but my understanding is that the teachers will be asked to come on the first part of their block, right?
That's right. So on their prep, it'll be everybody mandatory for the first half of their prep time. And then they can choose to carry on, or they can choose to stay for the 75 or however long they want.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, it will be the incoming and outgoing trustees then for the area, or will just be, like, for my case, it would just be me, or
It
would
would
be,
just be you because there's
because they don't get sworn in?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, with that, yeah.
Trustee Adam.
Not a question, it is a comment that I'm extremely grateful to the director and others, whoever was involved, that the session for MCS is scheduled so that I can participate just before my time is done, because my time being done does not say anything about my loss of interest in all matters educational. My blood runs blue and green here. And you're never going to get rid of my opinions, even when I'm no longer at this table. And I certainly, as a long-time teacher and administrator and central board worker connected to MCS, I have a lot of opinions about secondary schools and the review necessary. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I will try to confine my remarks to my permitted 1.5 minutes.
And final word, I mean, if this is anything close to what the elementary school review was in terms of the positiveness and what we get out of it, it's going to be excellent. Yeah, cool. All right. Next item on our agenda for the open session. It's was contained in our agenda packages, the board work plan. There is a recommendation to approve the work plan that we will bring up following our Director of Education's discussion here.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, this is, as Vice Chair Kaiser has pointed out, really for the current school year, the work plan for staff and of course the board work plan respectively, working together in our mission to foster outstanding educational experiences. Second year of our work plan based on our renewed strategic plan for 2021 to 2025. It's a refreshed template that we've created last year really for this, and I think it's tightened the size and the layout of the work plans of the past, which I think is grateful for all of us in digesting a lot of detail operationally as well as on a governance perspective. Number of system level plans of action are associated with the multi-year strategic plan. The graphic illustrated on page 15 of the multi-year strategic plan provides an overview of the annual action plans in relation to one another. And operationalized by all of our services, corporate, employee, program, and special. Call it the grapefruit, but it really does have the budget in the center, the wedges of all of our annual action plans, and it's wrapped around by that strategic communications and public relations piece. The board work plan for 2022-2023, you'll see in attachment A. It's an outline of the agenda items, senior staff leads, timelines and schedule that are scheduled for committee and board meetings, as well as the links to the goals for each of our strategic priorities. As noted in the color-coded legend, some items that are reported on regularly will remain in black color, Others are not in green color. Those are really one-off reports by and large, just based on the times of the sector of education or of society. And the annual action plans are featured for ease of reference in blue. The work plan for staff, appendix or attachment B, again organized by strategic priority, delineates the goal statements, senior staff liaisons, the objectives for the annual action plans, timelines, as well as the status of each objective or action. And there's nothing in that status column right now, other than a few notes, because of course, in most cases, we're either continuing the ongoing work of that particular goal, or we're just getting started. So we'll fill in the right-hand column as the year goes on. I mentioned that of importance to note. As always, the Board of Trustees plays a pivotal role from both the governance and fiduciary perspective in ensuring the sensible and sound stewardship of our resources through the board work plan. The close connection between the plans addressed herein really aims to cultivate systemness across schools and central departments. That is, the development of shared mindsets regarding a small number of ambitious goals as coherence at the system level, and the implementation of our policies, our administrative procedures, our practices, our protocols as alignment at the system level, ensuring that it's operationalized through the work plan for our staff. So happy to answer any questions. I will turn it over to the lead of the senior staff if it's a specific to a particular area that they have expertise in. And grateful once again to the senior staff for pulling together some overarching key objectives that will be followed up in greater detail when they present their annual plans as outlined in Appendix A.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Do we have questions?
I have a
Sure,
question.
absolutely.
I can. And it's on the staff work plan, and I'm really looking at the 3, which is focusing professional learning for staff on sound assessment and evaluation practices, effective instructional strategies, et cetera, et cetera. I guess one of the questions I had, and I'm sure you do this, is how do you evaluate how do you evaluate the impact of what that professional learning is? Or and I know it's not necessarily easy to do, but I'm just wondering what you might have in place or what your thinking is on that.
I have a couple of comments, but I'll turn it over to the team for any comments on assessing our professional learning over time, anything that they'd like to share, and I'll just join in. Please.
I could speak to that a little bit. As some examples of last year when we had some learning with Sandra Herbst around assessment and evaluation. So some of the things that we did was we had school teams have follow-up conversations as a response to the learning, and then submit back to us what their key learnings were, and then what questions that had raised for them for the future and things that they wanted to give further consideration to as a school team. So that was a really great way. And we did that via Google form that they could submit that back to us so then we could have an idea, since we weren't able to be present at all conversations, although we did try to have a coach at each conversation. What were the schools thinking about in response to their learning? And that gave us some indication of, what was the impact of that. But you're right, it's a very difficult thing to be able to measure. Sometimes it is us being able to note the participation, the engagement in the learning, but also trying to gather and have those feedback conversations with the educators who were involved to try to get a sense of what that impact was. And then also, I would say that then the system team being out and being in classrooms and working with teachers and working with the students, they're also able to gather a lot of observational data around what they see, because they know that if we have this learning in place and we have this great experience, but then they go out into the system and they don't see any impact of it, then that gives us a lot of great information. So that is really, and although it doesn't come in data form, it is such powerful triangulated information, because they're going out and they're making these observations, having these conversations and bringing that information back. And that's always guiding the next steps. So I hope that helps to explain.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. It's a matter of making sure you do bring back that information, right? And how do you quantify and qualify that? And I'm sure you have a method of doing that. So I'm happy to hear that. But
it's something we're always thinking about and trying to think about, are there other ways of doing it? And, can we get other information? Definitely. So it's always on our mind to be able to think about how are we knowing what the impact is. So always a work in progress. And right now, in relation to our annual action plans, we're having those conversations around how will we monitor and what will those checkpoints be for this year's planned activities. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
It's just more of a comment, what Jenny was saying is, it just sort of the proofs in the pudding with coaches and leads and things like, people like that, that having a pulse on the county through the people that we collectively have in our schools. So I think that that information will probably get back to Jenny more than anyone else. And I just think it's really, really valuable, particularly the first couple of months after you're spearheading a certain topic or a certain new thing that's going to be spearheaded. So I just think that's another plus for our coaches and our leads. I just think it's information that's invaluable. Because, you know, if you're either spot on or you've missed the mark, or, you know, with some things, moving forward, you'll go, wow, I didn't realize it'd have that much of an impact. And others, you say, gee, you know, I really thought this would happen, but it doesn't appear to be happening. And maybe the coaches or leads could just question as to, well, why? There could be some brainstorming sessions. So
Yeah.
it's more of a comment that I'm just stating. Anyway, thank you.
I was just gonna add as well, just because it really resonated with me the other day, I was speaking with the principal who was talking about the fact that they were able to attend some geography in-service recently for secondary, and their VP was going to be attending the science in-service, and they were commenting on how, you know, before COVID, our principals were very involved with the professional learning as well. And for all the reasons we know, it's been more difficult to do that. And certainly when we had standards last year, though, we did have admins sitting in on that virtual piece when they could as well. So administrators being as present as possible during that professional learning is another excellent mechanism, because they know what it is that we've been learning, thinking about, discussing, and at CAS and ACES, they'll follow up on those things. And then they could steer and say, we might need some extra support here, or that's not really sticking, or maybe we need to another go around on it. So another piece of the importance of their capacity as an instructional leader and assistant as well.
Go ahead.
May I make a further comment?
Sure, absolutely.
We seem to have time in hand. You're probably aware that I have a lot of teacher friends, people still in the system. And one of what the changes that has happened since I was last an administrator in the system was that we got these people called coaches. And they are so appreciated by anyone I've ever asked about, or who have brought up the subject with me. And they are appreciated for the expertise they bring and the way they do their job, so that the teachers are not feeling defensive. Here's somebody judging me and I better shape up. They are doing an amazing job. And I know people with 30 years of experience under their belts who have talked to me about what a great job this and that coach did in coming to their classroom and discussing these things with them. So it is really being appreciated, and it's something that did not exist in my time. And I think it's a tremendous thing that there's been a shift from thinking that anybody from Central is going to come here and judge me and I have to improve my practice. We do want you to improve your practice, but not in that sense, right? And this is how we improve the practice. And I think that's been a very, I can't speak for everybody, but I've had a lot of, over the years, a lot of very appreciative feedback about the coaching and central staff, like student success, not mentioning anyone in particular or anything like that. You know, that the value of that to the school and to individual teachers who are really already excellent teachers, let alone to ones who are still struggling. So thank you for that. Whoever was responsible, probably nobody here, but
Great comments, Jenny.
So you prompted me with another thought, Marjorie, as you were speaking, just that is another way actually of monitoring, because the coaches have, you know, often have individualized goals with the teachers that they're working on. And a lot of those often are related to assessment and evaluation as an example, because we know it's such a, you know, important and impactful part of a practice. So when they have a goal with the teacher that they're working with, that part of that process is, you know, what data are we gathering in relation to that goal and what is the impact we're seeing in the classroom? So it may not be big picture whole system, but there is, you know, there is monitoring taking place in that daily work, which really is the most important and most critical work in terms of impacting practice and that coaching relationship and partnership that you spoke of.
And I'm already hearing reports about our Indigenous grad coaches, and if there's any way we could expand that grad coaching beyond the Indigenous population. We have lots of students in our schools who are disengaged. And my questions earlier about student involvement in the secondary school review related to that, that the student senate, wonderful, and I know the student senators make an effort to engage the disengaged students, but nonetheless, we've got this almost an underbelly would be an appropriate description of people who are not happy at high school and who don't think there's a future there for them, and it's nothing to do with them. They just got to live through these years before they can get on with their life. And we need some coaches directed at them, but I know it's called dollars.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think what Trustee Adam raises is a really important point, especially the last word she spoke to, which is dollars. One of the elements that a board of trustees is going to have an eye on, in addition to senior staff, is where investments are made in a district. I'll be frank with the table that we're one of the few districts left with a coach cadre relative to the size we have. It's not to say people don't have consultants or point people in a given role, but we have a coach team for all the right reasons that I equate in an industry to the R&D branch, the research and development branch of an organization. That is the first thing that can easily come under fire when you need to tighten the dollars or reduce in something. But like it does for most organizations, when you don't have the research and development branch, that group of people that help move initiatives forward for all the reasons that Trustee Adam and staff have mentioned, you're cutting into your long-term vision with a short-term decision. And from a board of trustee governance perspective, having an eye to the realities of the day, but not losing sight of what's needed for the long-term benefit is very, very important. And it's incredible how many districts have not got that infrastructure in place and are now living to regret the tale of not being able to move some things forward. Now, it's not all the coaches that do that work. It's the teachers and the administrators and the schools, all the educators that do the work day to day. But the support infrastructure is very, very important in helping move it forward. And we learned a lot during the pandemic period about how that can be adapted over time to different circumstances in a situation when occasional teaching staff, for instance, isn't as fulsome as it might be in another time period. So critical element of our organization. So grateful it's been mentioned and recognized here, because I think the senior leaders that coordinate that group of individuals do a phenomenal job in making sure that the work that happens is on point. And what we do know from years and years of research is that over 90% of what's learned at a large scale one-off professional learning session is completely gone within 24 to 48 hours. Completely lost. People return to their reality. Even if it was stimulating and exciting, a great speaker, they go back to what was their day-to-day, and most of it doesn't carry forward. What we also know from years of research is what's tremendously impactful is that what we call elbow-to-elbow work right in a person's context. Exactly as Trustee Adam said, that's not threatening, it's not judgmental, it's just helping an individual in their setting that makes a huge, huge difference in the long-term advancement of the professional learning. So I just think it's a really interesting topic area, and grateful for the commentary.
It kind of reminds me of, years and years ago, there was a lot of pressure to remove school support counselors. It was a ministry initiative. I could tell a nice story about sitting in Mr. Kennedy's office talking about that, but and we stuck to our guns, and in the long term, I think boards that did not stick to that were probably, challenged quite a bit. So I see the same kind of, I see a similarity in what you're talking about in terms of coaching. So that's interesting.
Just one more comment to add what Director Buffoni said, and that is I retired just over 5 years ago. So I'm relatively still, I feel like about 1 foot of not as current on the day-to-day frontline staff, but I was around 5 years ago. And when the whole coaching thing was coming about and growing, and you're sitting in a staff room or you're sitting with colleagues, and it's like, what the hell are they doing over at the board office? Like, they're going to need a bigger parking lot. You hear these things. And kudos to our system and our leads and our coaches, because I think they've earned through conversation and time, generally speaking, the frontline respect. And it just hasn't happened by chance. I think it's happened by, I think in part, whether it be Superintendent Poirier or Bill Smith or whoever, hiring the right people. I mean, I've met some of them, I know some of them, and, generally speaking, I think that they've forged a pathway of their own success in their own domain. And they become, a teacher feels comfortable with their expertise. And you don't just get that, you earn that. And I think generally speaking, I think that the people in those positions have earned it. And to what Pino said, sometimes when things get rough, those are the first things he might say, oh, maybe we could, trim a little here. It's going to be harder to trim a little here in this board just because of that reputation that they built. And I've heard firsthand from people that, were somewhat cynical or like, what are they doing over there? But they're well beyond that now. So I speak firsthand. I've heard it in my community. And, kudos to that, sticking to your guns, the people who've been instrumental in our board doing that. Thank you.
And just, I don't know why I'm thinking of this, but at the corporate entity I work at, I mean, they sent us all the way to a week in Waterloo it was all about coaching. So I can't remember what it was called, no managing or something like that. Like they wanted to change the whole concept. I will tell you that they are reverting back away from that. So, I mean, to your point about we have to be very careful about not falling into that trap because of how successful it is here in this board. So, yeah. All right. There is, oh yes, last words to Trustee.
I have one more question, sorry, and it's to do with the board work plan, actually. It's not staff work plan, the board work plan. I thought it looked really, I appreciate the way it's put together and how it's written, so I can kind of connect the dots. I do just want to be sure that if there was something the board wanted to hear about, we would still be able to say, we would like a report on A, B, or C, or we'd like to hear more about X. I think sometimes we forget that we could still ask for that. We haven't done a lot of that, but I think we just need to remind ourselves that if there is something that I don't think the director would be too upset if we did ask for that.
Not all, and through you, Mr. Chair, I apologize. I should have read the sentence I don't always read it verbatim, but adaptations to the work plan sought by the Board of Trustees may be made at any point during the school year. So you've got it in writing.
There you go.
But that's our main plan, sort of, but by all means, if something arises, it's just our go-to plan, and then we just adapt and adjust to it.
No, it looks great.
Based on trustee updates.
It's very good.
So I'm looking for someone to forward the following recommendation that the Renfrew County Board of Trustees approve the board work plan for the 2022-2023 school year. Someone be willing, Trustee Gannett, seconded by Trustee Adam. Any further questions? All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Next item, turning it over to our director again. It's a debrief on the school system reopening for the fall. Nothing in the agenda package. It's an information item.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just to start off, then I'll turn it over to Superintendents Barnes and Poirier to get us started from a corporate and employee service perspective, and then to our team of superintendents that oversee our schools, Renal, Kristen, and Jenny, to speak to that. Just very grateful for, I don't know if I should use the word normal anymore. I am not quite sure if that's the right context here, but for a restart that felt a lot like the starts of the past and not so heavily laden with restrictions for all the right reasons, as Superintendent Poirier mentioned earlier, of the last couple of years, but we've had a more normalized start, which I think has been well received by our students, our staff, and our school communities. Understanding, of course, we are in a negotiation period, and that's underway, as has started for our district, but that has started well, and that we've got parameters in place that ensure that our safety of our students and our staff remain for schools and workplaces, but that we continue with the good learning that take place is predominantly in person, but also with a virtual component for those families that chose that. So I'll turn it over to Jen and Jacqueline for comments from their perspective, and then to the ESOs of schools, just to give you a bit of a debrief on how the startup has gone this month. Hard to believe we're at the end of September, but we are.
I know, it is hard to believe. It was mid-August and it was mid-September. Now it's the end of September. So, well, as you know, transportation, it's a little bit, it's been not the smoothest of smooths, but the fact that we're only short 2 routes out of 201 is pretty good when you compare what's happening in the province. And so we did actually get a 2% increase for this year. So that will get passed on to the operators. And I know it probably won't be what they're looking for, but it's just the flow through and that's the way it works. Finance, of course, it's a busy time of year. We're finishing up all of the reports from last year and then getting this year started. So getting budgets out to schools because they're anxious to, get up fundraising again and get their spending and their activities going. So we're doing our work that we can do to support them. And facilities, of course, is we got all that summer work done as Bill reported on, and now it's we're looking towards what that capital list is going to look like coming into this next year. Most of the work will be done on school holidays or next summer, but it's the tendering process that we like to get out as soon as possible, especially with supply chain. Where it is as we can get on people's to-do lists sooner than later, that works for us. And finally, I know I haven't really brought an update on the childcare center, and I've been thankful nobody's asking me about it. But we are so close to being done. I think we're at 97 or 98%. I just signed the invoice recently, and it's the door handles or it's the cubbies. It's that supply chain. So we're working with the provider. We'll be hopefully getting to, I'm looking at Renault because it's not Steve anymore, getting ready to that announcement stage where we can move and get the operator in and operating and everything else. So stay tuned. It shouldn't be too much longer and we'll get that going. Definitely.
Thank you. In terms of startup, I feel like things have gone well. You know that this is new to me, so I guess it's what I don't know either. Certainly a lot of time being spent right now in terms of thinking about and preparing for negotiations, but have had opportunities to connect with the leads of the different unions in this district and feel comfortable with the relationships that we have and our ability to, set up opportunities to discuss what people are thinking going forward. Not all negotiation dates are set, of course, because there are certain protocols we need to follow in terms of how things happen at the central table and then come to us. But we are in the process, and we have had meetings with QB, both branches of them on multiple occasions. In terms of human resources in relation to compliance around our staffing and class size, today, at the end of today, the HR department will be submitting to the Ministry of Education our compliance for elementary. I was just talking to Jody and Michelle on my way in here, and we're just waiting for one final revision to be made. And I got a text a few minutes ago, so I think we're good, and we'll be able to be compliant, and that will be submitted. In addition, I had a meeting this morning, Andrea Holden and myself, with OSSTF in terms of looking at caps, and we were able to resolve our cap issues for first semester, so that we're in a really good place there as well. Something, of course, that we always talk about at this time of year is our ability to have supply teachers, supply EAs, backfill for any roles, and we are stretched again as a system. We do have in place with HR, as we've had in the past. They're doing interviews of new people who are coming aboard who are interested in being casual, some unqualified, and we still use Tracy Stevens and Kathy Kite to support us in those interviews, and they're lovely at it, as you can imagine. They're both very personable and spend time with new and interested employees in our district to see if we feel comfortable and to help with the onboarding process with them. And despite the fact that we are feeling those pressures, I would also say, though, that things are going fairly smoothly because we're used to it. And I think we have a process in place that works well. And I haven't, touch wood, heard a lot of backlash on that. And I think it's because everybody knows that all people are doing their best in terms of being able to respond to that. In terms of health and safety, I would say that a majority of my focus has been on human resources up to this date. We do have all staff have completed their modules in health and safety, and right now we are, responding to any needs that we're seeing out there. And I've heard some good feedback on a recent module that we added in on science safety and hearing from some science teachers who are reaching out to ask some really good questions. And really what we want through things like modules around health and safety is for people to ask questions, because that's how we make sure that we're in a good place. I will be looking at opportunities to, review some things going forward and make sure that we're being, proactive in what we are doing. And I think just the last thing I would add is that I feel really welcomed at the board office by both Human Resources Department and Health and Safety. And it's nice to have good relationships with people that are longstanding that assist in that transition. So just if you see any of them, let them know that kudos for embracing somebody new coming in and being open to that. Thanks.
Maybe just to build upon what's been mentioned, I think there's a sense of excitement in schools where this is the first time we're reopening without any COVID restrictions. So that in and of itself, there was a sense of that was palpable, excitement that was palpable in the schools. So generally speaking, people were like lots of smiles, which is different from the last couple of years where people might have been smiling, we just didn't see them, right? Because they were with us. In terms of some of the schools that I oversee, we have a number of schools where enrollment is up, so that's always good. I feel compelled to for a shout out to Whitney, which might be the fastest growing school in the entire province, where we've gone from 32 to 47. Like that's incredible growth. But what we're seeing in a number of our schools, Whitney being one of them, but and others, I'm sure if you're on Twitter, you're seeing some of the great things that schools are doing that are modeling inspired learning vision. They're connecting to their community. There's lots of experiential learning. So that is very nice to see. Certainly a return, a forceful return to that in the startup. The last piece I'm just going to add is it's been great to be working with Tina Nelson, our new administrator. She's a vice principal of Indigenous education. That allows for Tina to be leading that team. It increases the visibility of the team. And just today, Brian and Marjorie and I were at the smudging of a wonderful mural at the entrance of Valor JK-12 that validates identities and creates a welcoming and inclusive environment for communities that in the past school has not been an affirming experience. So certainly in this week where we are inching our way towards Truth and Reconciliation Day, I'm extremely proud of the work that we've been doing in that respect. So that's from my school and certainly one of my portfolios, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues to talk about some of their experiences.
So lots going on. Working on my blueprint, which is going to be a 7 to 12 similar. I asked if it was similar to Zello or career cruising, but it's more similar to career cruising, but certainly to support students and their families with course choices. And it also has different options that link to, if I want to become this when I'm older, of course, meeting the administrative requirements, but what things should I be pursuing, and kind of keeps like a tracker for the student for their time in high school. So a number of guidance counselors have been trained, some administrators have been trained, but looking to, I don't know the exact date when that will come in to play, but people are they're really liking my blueprint in comparison to Zello, which was a very good mechanism for doing that, but this has a lot more options to it. Next Tuesday at Opeongo is the SHISM launch day. So that's an opportunity again to return to, coming together in person, and certainly the schisms in the Renfrew County District School Board are amazing, but it's an opportunity for schism leads and a lot of learning and excitement to continue with that. Garfield Ginny Newman has been working with educators as well. So I think there are 8 dates in which he is here. And again, when there was the query about, how do you measure professional learning in terms of assessment and the like, so certainly Garfield is well versed in that regard, similar to Sandra Herbst's approach, but working with geography teachers in the system. There's also been some workshops for de-streamed science, so certainly the new de-streamed science curriculum this year. So support for ways of instruction, and to Bernald's point, Tina has also gone to those sessions with educators to talk about land-based learning and Indigenous ways of knowing, and of the professional experiences that people have had just in terms of things I help to oversee. That has been really deep learning, and certainly something that there's a lot of query to continue that learning moving forward. There is the difference makers, sorry, that's taking place as well this coming Thursday. So things are in gear and happening. I personally, being new, I have got to visit all of my school sites. And when I walk in to the school sites, I've said, well, first of all, when I look outside, I'm like, wow, like just in terms of what is available to students in terms of the property and the play on the property. And then certainly inside, it's been a really welcoming atmosphere. Like really welcoming. Really nice.
And I'll echo, I was going to also comment just on the general morale, in the sense when you visit schools right now. I'm just been really overwhelmed by that feeling when walking in the door and talking to educators throughout the system. And when I ask administrators, how are people doing? How are people doing? And the response has been, they're doing good. People are in a good place. And that has been really nice to hear. And the other thing I was going to just comment on was just the sense of teamwork from our admin teams that has really stuck out to me as I've visited and had conversations with people, and just the impact of that partnership and coming out and building relationships, especially where we've had change in admin teams and buildings. And they've just commented on that, working together and getting out there, getting to know people and building relationships and team atmospheres. That has really stuck out to me. I also, in some of my schools, have had schools reporting growth. So we're looking forward to hearing, what all of the numbers end up looking like across the system, but people reporting areas of growth for sure. I would mention that from a special education portfolio, and that's my big learning hat right now, definitely. Also just, coming back to the team and understanding that with some of that new growth in our system has brought some new challenges too. With many of our students who have registered with us coming to us with some needs that often are complex. So, and there are needs across the system right now that we're being well informed of, which is fantastic. And so we're trying to figure out a plan of being able to support schools and responding to that to those needs across the district in the best way that we can, with the most efficient use of resources that we can, and working with the special education team and working with Shannon Cassidy Rouleau and Lisa Riviere to just have a coordinated approach to that support in buildings. I would also mention, just because it's a little bit of a new venture for us, with the tutoring supports funding supplied by the ministry, that we have this new little team that have named themselves LISTs, because they're literacy intervention and support teachers. So this team of LISTs is supercharged right now. Lisa Murphy and Shelley Gagne have been working with them, and they're getting ready at this point to head out to schools with a plan to do reading assessments from senior kindergarten to grade 2 on all students, and then to bring that information back and plan interventions with school teams in response to some reading interventions that might be necessary. I also just wanted to highlight, in case you haven't seen it, coming back to that idea of being able to do things in schools, that Fellows High School has this fantastic parent symposium happening this Saturday, which was brought on through their school council and a grant, a parent reaching out grant that they had applied for funding to do this parent symposium. So they've been planning that with Fellows admin. So I said, and it's all about adolescence. I said, I've got 2 now, sign me up. Coming to see what support I can find out about, but that's a morning presentation with sessions planned, including a keynote from a physician from CHIO who's coming to talk about strategies for supporting regulation, managing anxiety. Really looking forward to that, as well as tons of community partners coming in, both to do presentations, but also just to set up and to be available so that, you know, they're telling families, you know, these are some of the services that we have in our area that you may, that may help you and support your family. And so they've opened that up to schools across the district. So they're hoping right now, they're just looking at their registrations and hoping they get some more. We know how some of these things can go, but they're really hoping for a nice turnout for that event on Saturday.
Any questions? Trustee Humphries? Yep.
Thank you for the update, though. That sounds great, and it certainly reflects what I'm seeing too in certain schools that I've had a bit of a chance to see. I was wondering if maybe Renan, you could fill in the details a little bit. Can you give us a sense of what might be happening in our schools around truth and reconciliation this week?
There's a combination of district initiatives, and then there are some local initiatives. So certainly as a district, we've asked every site to be flying the Every Child Matters flag. And the ministry has asked that on Friday, maybe at half-mast. So that's going to be consistent across the district. In a number of sites, schools took it upon themselves to actually have a flag raising ceremony. And you've seen certainly some images of this over Twitter and social media. We had a smudging this morning for the mural, as previously mentioned, at Valor K-12. I know that in my schools there is a smudging at Herman Friday morning. So there's a wide array of activities going on. The Indigenous team has put out a list of resources to schools. And I know that the grad coaches, the instructional coach are out there supporting work at the school level. A lot of obviously orange shirt day on Friday. So there's going to be a combination of district and schools are. The nice thing is that schools are taking it upon themselves to do some of the work. This is from EDPS, for example. So we're seeing a lot of these things happening right across the district.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for that.
Seeing no other questions, this was a information item. There's no recommendations. I'm not aware of any other agenda item for committee of the whole. Looking for a motion to adjourn committee of the whole by Trustee Adams, seconded by Trustee Gannett. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you.
Good timing.
Easy timing. We've got a few minutes before board. Let's take 6 or 7 minutes.
Okay. May we who are assembled here have a true understanding of the duties that are placed in our hands. We seek to have the wisdom to honor our obligations to the good of our residents of Renfrew County, to the parents, teachers, electors, and especially the students. May those who teach be ever inspired by goodness, and may the wisdom and knowledge which they impart to our students ever serve as a beacon to lighten their way. As trustees and administrators, we will work together with integrity, perseverance, and respect to the fulfillment of the trust bestowed upon us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have regrets from trustees, Dave Shields and Leo Boland. They're unable to be with us today. And, to begin with, I need a motion, to approve the agenda for today's, meeting. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Trustee Gannett, Trustee Edge. All those in favor? And the motion to confirm the agenda is carried. Declarations of conflict of interest, are there any with today's board agenda? Seeing none. Move on then. Approval of minutes. We all had an opportunity to read the minutes. And they were sent out previously. And I need a motion to confirm the minutes of the August 23rd, 2022 board meeting. Trustee Kaiser and Trustee Humphries. All those in favor? Thank you very much. The motion to confirm the minutes of the August 23rd, 2022 meeting is carried. I think we say this every single time. This is the best part of the meeting. It really is. And we'll always say that because we're certainly very pleased to have with us today number of individuals. I'll ask Superintendent of Education Jenny Smith and one of her first official interview here.
Yes.
And please introduce these three individuals who are going to make a presentation to us.
Sure, I'd love to. So we have with us today Lisa Murphy, and I know Lisa Murphy will be no stranger to you because she's been here at this time of the year before to come and speak to you as the principal of summer learning. And I said to Lisa today, how long have you been doing that? And this is her 4th year doing this role. So she's coming to share with us some of the highlights from the summer learning experience this year, and brought with her this terrific team, Jordan Sloan and Joe Graham, who were liaisons for the summer learning program, who are coming to share some of their observations and reflections, as well as some of the data in relation to the achievements of the summer learning program. So I'll turn it right over to you.
So we're happy to be here. Thanks for inviting us. We were excited to be able to run summer learning in person finally this summer after being virtual for 2 summers. So that was very exciting for all of us. And I think, you know, the result was a very excited group of educators and very excited students and families. So we're going to share the presentation today and kind of pop in and out. And I'm going to set the scene for some of the information that's coming up. So in the spring, we advertised for summer learning. At that time, we thought that we would try to offer SK to grade 8 programming. There didn't seem to be as much of an appetite for grade 7 and 8 summer learning this summer. So we decided that we would focus on our SK to grade 6 programming. The junior programming the interest in junior was a bit lukewarm. So we tried to be creative, and what we ended up doing was we were able to transport some junior students from Eganville to come to Cobden, and that formed a group of junior students, and we were able to do the same in Petawawa. We bused a small group of junior students to Pembroke, and then those 2 groups formed one group in Pembroke. So it was nice to be able to offer that support to all those students, even though we didn't necessarily have the numbers at the sites. We ended up running programming at 8 different sites, 21 classrooms in total. And as you can see from the slide, we had a wealth of educators, lots of layers of support for classrooms. Ideally, we would have wanted to have 1 teacher and 1 EA per classroom. We fell a little short in the EA support, but as you can see, some rich support from ECEs to student assistants. We had school support counselors who were assigned, who were shared between sites. So they traveled to support students. And then the liaison, you'll hear a little bit more about the liaison work a little later on. We also had 3 SWEP students, that's summer work experience program students. And those are some of our special education students in the board
who we place in either custodial or summer learning jobs, and they help out. So although it says 3 SWEP students, we actually had 10 SWEP students this summer. So 3 were with our programming in classrooms with students, and then 7 were with our custodial staff. The numbers, yeah, that's fine. The numbers are up there. All right, you're next.
Perfect. So I'm going to talk a little bit about literacy and numeracy instruction that happened in the classroom. So like Lisa said, we were fortunate in part to her great work hiring all those people that we had a significant amount of support for academic needs in our classrooms. So that was fantastic. And so the instruction in the classrooms looked different from the regular classroom in that we didn't have to really do whole group instruction very often. So we had got a lot of small group instruction, and teachers were then able to differentiate. They were able to take exactly what the needs of their students were and teach them in small groups. And those small groups didn't even have to alternate between teachers and independent work because there were so many educators in the classroom that those educators were able to give support almost the entire day to each student. So that was fantastic for our literacy program. So there's lots of examples up here I'll go through, but the summer learning program for literacy focused mostly on letter and sound recognition for and phonological awareness for our primary students, because there's lots of those kids, like if you think about SKs going into grade 1, if they don't have all the letters and sounds, grade 1's a foundational year for reading. And so it's really important that they get this little boost from summer learning. And that was very evident in the data that we collected. In addition, for our junior students, there's lots of gap filling that happened in our classrooms. And so because of the small group instruction, again, with the assessments we'll go through in a little bit, Jordan's got them up on slides here. We're able to see exactly where the holes are in those students' knowledge. And then the summer learning program was able to fill those gaps. So some of the stuff that they did would be like phonemic awareness, things like Haggerty. So it's a flip book chart that is the board bought for almost every classroom, every school in the board. And so these teachers were able to use it as well. And it's like a 5 to 7 minute program each day that lets kids learn very quickly the phonemic awareness stuff that they need. And it's fantastic program. I use it every day in my kindergarten class this year. We're also able to do chalk and sock. And again, that's in small groups. And so these kids are able to, instead of the chalk and sock happening to the entire program, and again, we're only talking about 15-ish students in the class. Instead, they're able to have a few small groups of chalk and sock so that these kids get what they need, these kids get what they need, and these kids got what they need. So that was awesome. Lexia happened as well. So Jordan's going to touch on Lexia a little bit later, but it's a program, an online program that targets exactly what students need based on an assessment they do at the beginning of the program. So each student did it for 20 minutes a day, and then lots of parents took the opportunity to let teachers or let kids do it after school as well. You can see the kids at the top here are working on a Go Fish game with letters and sounds. And so normally in a regular classroom, this would probably be an independent activity. So the teacher's working with one group and they're doing this activity by themselves. But in summer learning, we're able to have an educator there, making sure that they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing and learning along the way. So that was awesome. You can see the bottom right here, the little trip to the library. So the Renfrew location got to go to the library a couple times, which was really great because some of these students may never have had that experience before summer learning. So yeah.
The other thing we tried really hard to do, it's not on a slide, but we tried to align our classroom practice really closely with what teachers would be doing September to June, and using the same programs and using the same classroom practices just to grow that capacity. So either, we may have had teachers who were regular educators in our system September to June, or if we had new people coming in, then they were able to familiarize themselves. So again, aligning the work and growing that capacity for future.
Yeah, and a lot of those programs that I listed on the side are things that teachers were doing in the classroom before. So it's familiar for these kids as well. Numeracy instruction was based almost exclusively on the Lawson Continuum, which Jordan's going to touch on in a few minutes. But basically the continuum is going to give educators the exact next steps that each of the kids need for how to develop in their numeracy. And so our summer learning program focused very exclusively in the fundamentals of addition and subtraction. So with the primary group, we've got kids that don't understand the concepts of addition and subtraction. And so again, those small group instructions, we're able to focus on that topic. And then for the junior group, we're also focusing on addition and subtraction, but we're focusing on gap filling because as they're moving through the years and moving into an intermediate grade eventually, we want to make sure that they have those fundamental math concepts. And so summer learning was able to let us do that, especially with our small ratios for educators to students. Yeah, and so some of the things that we got to do here would be some games. So you can see this kid is going through, and so there's numbers written all over the pavement. So they got to go and they got to bounce the ball however many times the number says on the ground, and then say the number and move on to the next one. So great for number recognition. The kids in the top right are making a number line, and they're representing numbers with 10 frames, with the numeral, with the word, and they're learning all of those things along the way. These guys are doing a patterning little game that they got to play together. And these guys are outside because outside was an awesome focus for kids because who wants to go to school in July? But so we got to try to get kids outside as much as we could. Perfect. And then this one I just threw in. So I actually taught this kid in SK last year. And so we had a class of 20 at Walters Addo because our room was so small. We were the 4th class. And so even in a class of 20 students with 2 educators, this kid had a hard time regulating in the classroom. And so he was a perfect candidate because he was a super nice kid. He was bright, but he just couldn't focus in our small class of 20 kindergarten students. And so he was a perfect candidate for summer learning. And so I asked his family and they said, yes, let's send him. So he goes to summer learning. This is in the 2nd week of summer learning. He said, hey, I want Mr. Graham to come and check out what I did. So I got a text from the teacher and I went into the classroom. And Archer had created, so if you look at this thing, it's hard to see here, but there's this piece of paper and it's from these wooden Tetris pieces. So he dumped the wooden Tetris pieces out. He didn't need that. And instead he took plastic linking cubes and he created this exact pattern that's tiny on this piece of paper that the Tetris pieces came in the box, and instead used his correspondence. He was able to create a unit of each of these plastic pieces and he created that pattern. And that's something he never would have been able to do in our class of 20 students, but in this supported role in summer learning, he was able to do this. That's what his brain was able to do. So this is an awesome part for summer learning because someone like Archer gained a whole bunch more information than what he had before. So he came in with not very many letters and sounds. He has most of them now, and then was able to show us that. Not even something we were asking him to do, but it was just very cool. So I wanted to share that with you.
Okay, can I just introduce you a little bit more? So Jordan, I just want to introduce the role a little bit. So this summer we tried to do something a little bit different. And I invited Jordan. She interviewed for the liaison position and was available to do virtual work. So we decided that her role was going to be Lexia, kind of troubleshooting Lexia, and then parent support, teacher support as well, but parent support, because we found that when we were virtual, parents really want to help their children, and they want to know what they can do, and they really care about, in particular, the gaps from the past 2 years, but they just want to help. So we decided that we were going to come up with this new role, see if it was successful, and Jordan would be the kind of the parent outreach in terms of supporting students throughout the program. So she'll talk to you a little bit about what that looked like and what the result of that was.
So this is my 3rd year with summer learning virtually. And we tried to kind of contain the parent outreach program. So we created a Google site for parent outreach. We hosted 3 live webinars weekly, and they were recorded for parents that weren't able to make it live. And then they could check back to that Google site anytime they wanted. There were resources available. There were recorded webinars. We linked again to everything that was happening in the summer learning classrooms as well as the regular classrooms throughout the year. So parents got to attend webinars to learn how to use Lexia, which is a program that they then had access to with their children beyond summer learning throughout the rest of the summer. Reading development, so how they could figure out where their children were and what they could do to help them along the way, using those ideas from the Lawson Continuum to work through numeracy concepts, but in fun ways. So instead of being in a learning hands-on with paper and pencil, it was card games and activities that they could do outside and ways that they could find letters in playgrounds and write in sand. So a lot of outreach that way. And it was really just ways that they could take that learning and extend it at home. They could understand what their kids were doing all day long and what they could do to help. So we had a flyer that went out with parents. We wrote in the original letter at the beginning of the summer to invite them to join us.
And we ask teachers to, in any communications that went home, to please keep including that link and reminding parents that resource is available.
And we had 210 unique parent visits to the site over the 4 weeks. So we did have parents checking in and using what was up there.
And the live events, not so much, but I think we just have to try again and maybe it's something that will grow and will catch on, but I don't think we should give up on it, but.
The recordings were accessed.
Yep.
So some of the webinars that we had were on Lexia Core 5 reading and what that was and how it could be recorded at home. We did a session on taking learning outside. We did reading development. We did numeracy development. We used access to our Sora online digital library and sort of walked parents through how they could use that at home and what they could do. And there was a Sweet Read summer program that they could participate in. Phonological awareness, all the things that we're doing in the classroom, and then that those children were doing all day long. So again, 210 visits, and the link is right up there, and the sites are both still live if you want to go check them out. We also had the opportunity to do professional learning with the teachers. So half my role was doing the parent outreach and half was the professional learning side. Because teachers were throughout the county, it kind of worked out really well that we could do it virtually, training our teachers on the assessments that they were going to do, and how they could use that assessment data then to create groups in their classrooms that they could focus the learning throughout their very short time really together. We worked with the liaisons, we got everybody popped up there, and then I was online for daily office hours. So teachers could come in with questions, liaisons could call in anytime and just ask anything that came up as they might.
Which was awesome.
Joe called me a lot. But especially during those first assessments. So these were the assessments we did right off the bat. We did a literacy quick phonics screener. So this kind of works through the skills in reading development from kindergarten through grade 6. It takes 10 minutes. It's super short, super quick. We got a lot of data about where our students were, and we were able to target the skills that they were working on. So right from the kindergarten, learning about the letters and the sounds, moving through CBC words, moving into silent E and R-controlled vowels, we could really figure out where our students were and what their next step was right away and focus on that for the 4 weeks that we had with them to develop that skill and to fill any gaps in the same way that we did with the loss and continuum for numeracy. We could figure out what strategy our students were using for addition and subtraction. We could see what they were comfortable with, and we could push them to that next step just along the way in that continuum. And so that was a good time to do the outreach because teachers could come on and say, I worked with this kiddo today. This is what they did. I'm just not quite sure. What do you think? What do you think a next step would be? And then this is some of the progress that we saw over the summer. So this is Lexia data. You can see it's a very short period of time, but you can see where we had 14% of our students at grade level, in grade level. At the beginning of the 4 weeks, we had 39% at the end of the 4 weeks. So for a very short period of time, that was quite good progress, 20 minutes a day. And Lexia is a tool that we do have in some of our regular classes throughout the year. And parents actually were given access to Lexia throughout the summer. So even when summer learning finished, they could still access that with their child with an iPad or phone. It's just an app. And I think we dropped off to, I want to say 30-ish% that continued right through the summer. I think that's it for me. Or am I talking about assessment and reporting, or you are?
Sure. Okay, so Jordan just showed the quick phonics screener as well as the Lawson continuum. And so we used those two tools mainly, as well as the Lexia data that Jordan just shared, to show our assessment and reporting. So at the beginning, everybody was assessed with the quick phonics screener as well as the Lawson continuum, and did that initial test on the Lexia program so that they were placed at their just right level. And then at the end of the program, for numeracy, the Lawson, we focused on addition and subtraction for primary and for junior. And it wasn't unless the junior was completely competent in all areas of the continuum for addition and subtraction that we then moved on to multiplication and division and then programmed according to that. So all of those initial assessments was able to target what our next steps were going to be for our students and how we created those small groups for literacy and numeracy. The counting interview was also used if students in the primary grades didn't place anywhere on the Lawson continuum. So we went back one step and did the counting interview instead. Yeah.
And if you just want to go back one, just also to let people know that we were very fortunate this summer to have some speech and language work in the program. And that was the first time that I had ever experienced that. Jenny Mick and Nicola Innes came in. They took referrals from the educators that were working the program. They did assessments and screeners, and then even did some referrals so that when students went back into schools in September, those were done. They even got to see some students who were on their waiting list. So I thought that was a real plus too.
That's awesome. We're also fortunate enough that the Empire location, we had a old booster bin full of awesome coding things. And so I was given the opportunity to run a little coding workshop with all 3 of the classrooms in the Empire location, the 2 primary rooms and the junior room. And so they were given the opportunity to experiment with entry-level coding. So we used Ozobots, which are right here, B-bots, and then the Spheros. I didn't throw the picture up there for that, but so 3 different types of coding that those students were able to use and experiment at the beginning with the primary classes. They were using the B-bots to sort of spell their names out on the mat, or they draw something and put a little code in there to make the Ozobot do a little spin or something. But often the cool part about this is there's links directly to our new math curriculum with introduction to coding for these kids, as well as critical thinking skills that they develop, because often when we first code, we're making mistakes and we're having bugs in our code. So they had to figure out how are they going to debug this code. If they're trying to spell my name, J-O-E, they're up here and it goes J-O and then down to the P, they have to figure out what went wrong and how they can fix it, it was really cool to see them do that. And then the older students, the junior class at Empire, we were able to get like an introduction to block coding for them. And because of, again, the low student numbers, as well as the high staff ratio, everybody was given assistance, especially in the younger grades. So nobody was really feeling frustrated, which is something that can happen sometimes with intro to coding. And so it was a really cool experience for those kids to get to do that.
I know we're really speaking quickly, but we have so much to tell you. The other really exciting element of this year's summer learning was some of the community partnership funding. So I'm going to talk about a few of them, and then Joe's got some sharing to do too. So one of the major community partnerships we had this summer was with Elevate Wellness Center. It's a center downtown Pembroke, and we were able to rent their space so that our junior students, these are the students that bused from Petawawa down to Pembroke to form that little group, which was awesome in a way. Those students would never get to meet each other otherwise. So that was just another perk. So once a week, this class went to the Wellness Center. They divided the group up into three sections, and one group worked in their workout facility. The second group worked with the school support counselor who was at every session, and they did a mindfulness or a social skills activity. And then the third group worked in the kitchen, and the person that we hired to work in the kitchen with the group, she did meal planning with the students, and they got to choose their menu. She did the shopping and then the cooking and then the cleanup with them. And then each day they all got to go to those 3 stations. So it was for that group, and the feedback was hands down, that was their favorite part of summer learning. So that was an awesome partnership. Hope we can continue. We also partnered with CPAN, who you might know from the Snowsuit Fund, but they also have a growing at home program that Lynn Smith, who's the coordinator, she's been really trying to kind of grow over the years. So what we did was we partnered her with the Queen Elizabeth Public School Junior Group, and she did some work with those educators. Then, as you can see in the third picture, those educators did some planning for their classroom, talking about growing and sustainability and the environment. And then their class prepared seed packets for every student in the whole board to take home. And you can see in the middle, I believe those are Valor students with their seed packets. And each seed packet contained, I think, 5 little bags of seeds, some for indoors and some outdoors. So Lynn Smith from CPAN was really excited that she was able to kind of spread that program in, 19 days. And then, that's Joe.
So the Renfrew location, for some of the primary classes, we're able to get a community partnership going with the Renfrew Fire Station. So they were able to bring their primary classes to the fire station and learn a little bit about fire safety. One of the student volunteers, one of the university students, even got to dress up like in the fire suit, and the kids got to ask questions about how things worked and everything, which is pretty cool. I wanted to go because I wanted to climb the ladder, but I don't think they would have let me. Pretty cool. So then they also got a partnership going with Domino's Pizza. And so for like pennies on the dollar, they were able to go to Domino's, and the kids were able to come back into the kitchen and create their own pizzas before they opened. So they learned how the pizza process works at Domino's from when someone places an order until it's boxed and ready to go out, which is pretty cool. So they all made their own individual pizzas and got to bring them back and eat them for lunch. So it was a pretty cool partnership for those kids.
And we had lots of those little partnerships. We had some major community partnerships, but once the program started, the educators just started to come up with ideas. Let's do this, let's do that. And it didn't all require funding. So those are partnerships that we can sustain over time. And then the other one that I want to talk about, just back up, was just with Shaw Woods. I think one of the highlights of education is when you can take your learning outside. So in the spring, we contacted Shaw Woods to see what they could offer in the summer. They don't really offer summer programming, but they did have a name of an educator that they said might be interested. So there was a teacher who was moving to Petawawa, who had some experience with outdoor education, who was really interested in coming and doing some programming. So she worked with the Eganville Cobden Junior class. She worked with those educators on kind of doing some planning to see how they could integrate some of the work that they could do at the Outdoor Ed Center with some of the classroom work. Also a very, very successful partnership.
And they went weekly. to Charlotte.
Weekly.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Once a week.
So 4 times. And the last one we were able to do was actually teacher directed from the Cobden location. So one of the primary teachers was like, is there any way that we can bring an Indigenous component into our summer learning program? I was like, that's a great idea. Let's find out. So I contacted the Algonquin Way Cultural Center, and a representative came in and talked to the students about deerskin bracelets. And then they were able, during that period, we started with the junior class. So the junior class learned how to do it. They became proficient at it. It was actually a lot harder than it looked. And so they created their bracelets, and then we pulled all the primaries together, and the juniors came over and actually worked with them as a community to create deerskin bracelets for everyone. And so it was a really cool way to see the kids all come together. And before that, there wasn't really any connection between the junior class and the 2 primary classes. So this was a really neat way to connect them as a community, and bring that Indigenous component into the summer learning program for Cobden. So it was an awesome thing that they got to do, and they got to keep the bracelets afterwards and bring them home.
I won't read the student and parent feedback to you. There's also some teacher feedback up there, but lots of positive things to say about the program. People love the Lexia. Of course, the low ratio, the small group learning. Lots of parents saying that, they just were so pleased at how confident their student was. And this is only 19 days when you think about it. It's only 4 weeks. So, I think that's pretty good news. Teacher feedback. Same kinds of positive feedback about the support, planning as a team. Lexia was lots of positive feedback for that. Again, the community partnerships. Check those out on your. Okay, so I know we're running out of time, and we still need to talk a little bit about some of the secondary summer programming, but this one will be a little bit quicker. This was my first year being involved in the secondary aspect of summer learning, and it was a learning curve for me because those of you who know me, all my experience has been in elementary education. But anyway, I decided I would try it. So we offered e-learning through the consortium and the co-op program. We didn't run the dual credit camp this summer. I don't know much about that. I just know that that was a big part of last year's presentation and we weren't able to run that or chose not to run that this summer. Just some numbers for you. And they might mean a little more if you put them in the context of last year. So last year, similar e-learning numbers. Last year, we were up a little bit, 152 down to 147 this year. And then the other number that's interesting is that our co-op numbers were up this year to 85 from 71. So always positive. I didn't have as much access to pictures, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of projects. So one of the teachers gave me access to some of the slideshows. So I was only thinking of co-op as a work placement, but those of you who are secondary know there's a lot more that goes into a co-op program. There's a course load, there are assignments. And when I was able to read those assignments, it was pretty amazing to see what students learn from their placements. And I guess I was always thinking of the placement as the work, but when you think about all the other skills that come along with a placement, they're almost even more important than just the work, right? The meeting the people. And this, I decided to share this one because this fellow was so intense in all the pictures that he submitted in his slideshow. He was right in there going to do the work. And then I loved, although not being able to do some of the work is unfortunate, I still enjoy the work that I can do. So you can tell that he just wants to get in there and do more. And once he gets some more training, he's going to be right in there. So I love that. And then the next one is, sorry if my back is still to you. And then I also decided to highlight this one because this is a youngster working in the healthcare system. And I loved the way she wasn't only thinking of the role, but she was thinking of it in the context of her small community and what that support means in her community. And then she says, you know, the visible effect of healthcare in a small community is what will draw me back to the area after my completion of post-secondary education. So again, it's almost like those community connections and partnerships again, and things that keep us connected to our community. And that's it. That's the whirlwind tour. All the thank yous. It takes a lot of cooperation to put a summer program together because the board does look different in the summer than it looks from September to June. So it takes lots of different people working together to pull it off. And I thank you. And I thank these two rock stars behind me. So that's what we have to share tonight.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I'll open it up to questions from trustees. Trustee Adam?
It's not really a question, but could you possibly put up the screen with the secondary school logistics numbers in it? I didn't get them all down. I'd like to have them.
We're too quick. This one?
That one, yes, thank you. I'll just need another minute. Thank you. That was not really a question.
You guys have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. I think when I first read the package, one of the things that stood out to me was the great involvement of the staff. I was quite impressed with that. And with both my parents being teachers, I'm not sure they would give up their summers, but it's so good to see the commitment of the teachers. I mean, we're noted for the commitment of our teachers in Renfrew County, and it shows here. I think that I just wanted to acknowledge that. If you could pass that along, it would be great. And I think that probably the people who appreciated it the most were the students. And the fact that they went from 14% to 39% is a great measurement of that success. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Trustee Ed?
Thank you very much for your presentation today, everyone. Definitely really happy to see that programming like Haggerty involved that we use in the schools from a year round. And then we've also used it in the summer learning program. I've used Haggerty before and I love that program. Just a question, in terms of secondary school, would you ever see an in-person use or a virtual learning secondary school, summer school program in our board ever? Or do you think with what we have, just e-learning and co-op, that's it for our board?
In person?
In person, yeah. So like open up
I don't,
RCDSB and bus.
I'm not sure because I I thought there might have been more interest in the grade 7 and 8 in-person learning, but there wasn't. So I don't know if that might be an indicator that there wouldn't be. And I think it gets tricky at the secondary level as well, right? Because students have to work, and so I'm not sure. I don't know, but I think, you know.
I just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Or an evening school in the summertime, or just
Mhm.
for pickup courses.
Certainly back in the day, there was summer school, and typically it was held at Opiongo. So they'd be busing kids in from Deep River and picking up kids in Petawawa and Pembroke, and same kind of thing from other points around the county. And some of those summer schools were pretty well attended, like talking a couple of hundred. But then over time, things changed. Trustee Humphries.
Yeah. Just I guess two things. Thank you for bringing the report. It's lovely to hear all the great things that happened over the summer. And I know these kids, you know, they've just been given a real boost into this year for them. I wondered whether or not you felt this year, and I'm thinking of the, you know, COVID implications and how kids managed through that. Did you have the sense that the kids needed more help this year than last year, or vice versa? Or did you have a sense that the gap was more pronounced this year than last year, or is there a difference?
So you might be able to speak academically. I noticed that one gap, mental health support was a gap. And in hindsight, I think we probably could have used a school support counselor at every site. The vision that I kind of had in my head in spring, but before any of the planning, was that school support counselors would travel and they would do some kind of preventative work and some group sessions. And the need was just so much greater than I had anticipated, the one-to-one need for students and family, that we weren't able to kind of follow that model. So that was one gap that I really noticed. In terms of, I don't know if you want to speak to that, or I don't want to put you on the spot either, but I mean, I think teachers in summer learning, teachers are just accustomed to working with, I don't want to say the lowest kids, but the kids that have the greatest needs or gaps. So I just think that, I don't even know that teachers even think about it. They just go in and they meet the student where they're at, and then we just hit the ground running. So I'm not sure if you can add to that.
Well, outside of summer learning, I taught kindergarten last year and again this year. And so when I was assessing kids at the beginning of last year, all my SKs were new to school. So they didn't come in JK because of COVID. And then obviously the JKs were new. And that cohort was much lower than the cohort that I'm assessing this year in SK that did come to school last year. So, but two different schools too. So that could, like, there's definitely not scientific proof there, but just from some observation that I've made.
I think we're focusing a little more in the way we teach literacy differently in terms of using something like a quick phonics screener. So we're seeing not necessarily more gaps. We're just meeting kids where they are in a more structured way. And, you know, filling those gaps really quickly instead of kind of muddling around and trying different things. We're really able to target that. So I think we saw that in summer learning, and having the small groups allowed us to make a lot of progress really quickly.
That's great. I mean, the small group's wonderful, right, for these kids. I did have one quick follow-up questions, and you sort of started answering it, Lisa, is what would you do differently next year based on your learnings? You probably have a huge list, but I know the mental health piece, you certainly addressed that one, and I don't know if there were a couple of other key ones that maybe you were thinking about.
Well, and I don't know how to solve this, but staffing was certainly a challenge.
Oh, I'm sure.
What else did I do differently? Like, there's some nitty gritty stuff, but the timing is always tricky because we always feel like we're rushed. So we always feel like we're doing things way too quickly, but you know, I don't know, maybe start sooner. I think I might do a better job, and it, you know, maybe it will be me or maybe it will be me, but I would do a better job of reminding people about summer learning and the purpose of summer learning and the value and the fact that these students are all of our students, because we sometimes forget, you know, for those people who leave at the end of June, there's a whole world going on in the month of July. So we need resources. We need spaces. Please welcome us. Please allow us to use resources. I think maybe we need to just do a little more PR. Maybe I'll do a little more PR for the program than I've done in the past. And the other thing we need to do too is we need to redefine maybe who the program serves best. I don't think we can serve everybody in a 19-day summer learning program, especially with some limited EA support. So maybe redefining, you know, who would benefit best from this program, because the point is to make gains, right? Just a few
That's
things
great.
off the top of my head.
That's great.
And I
Thanks,
have a
Lisa.
list.
And Trustee Gannett.
Most of my questions have been answered, but one thing is you mentioned about sort of PRing the program for next year a little bit more. And just, you know, maybe our communications department at some point could in some fashion assist in that. I just think that, I mean, you can't get a bigger bang for your buck from 14% to 39%. I mean, the research dictates kids at this age, they're like sponges given the opportunity with smaller class size and all the supports given. So my other 2 or 3 questions were already answered. So just my comments. Thank you.
And Trustee Adam has another question, then Trustee Ed.
Yes, I know we've had some interruption through the normal sequence of things in our schools, but I used to get an invitation to attend the last day party of summer school. And I didn't get one this year, and I was kind of putting it on a back burner and thinking, oh, they'll let me know when it's happening. And then I didn't get it, and then I was sad. Because I so enjoyed it. And, you know, I mean, many of us do not regularly have acquaintance with children of that age. And it's really nice to sometimes just be able to go in when the atmosphere was so good.
We didn't get overlooked. I think we just didn't have the year-end celebrations like maybe we want. We
Okay.
just kept working right through it at the last day.
Yes,
But if we bring celebrations back, we will be sure to extend
that
it.
was why I wanted to mention it, so that perhaps you would consider it next year.
Trustee Ed.
Yeah, Lisa's comment about the school support counselors kind of got me thinking, and I know like it obviously comes down to funding when we're funding for summer school and there's priorities for mental health, but could we look at other opportunities next summer, Director Mahoney and superintendents, that we could work with community organizations, example like the Phoenix Center, to support even like 1 day a week they can come in to take the weight off of those educators in there, as well as reality is it's summer programming and there isn't a lot of funding from the ministry for that. And we probably may not be able to fund a school support counselor at every school site, but if we're working with our community groups that we already have in our back pockets, is that an opportunity for to kind of come up with that demand? Because family and youth support during that time is very important, especially in summer. And coming out of COVID right now, we need to do better and support people. We need to hold, yeah.
I'll let Superintendent Poirier start and I'll add on.
I just wanted to share some clarification around some pieces. So in terms of the funding for school support counselors, like Lisa said, we were anticipating we might need that. We also have to remember that we need staff who want to sign up for it. And again, we may have not put it out that broadly on that case. I can't remember, Lisa, but just in terms of thinking about that. The second piece is we did have a partnership with Phoenix Center this year, and they did support us from that social work perspective with families, so that if anybody came over the summer, we could do that reference to them as well. I would note though, in general, areas that are offering mental health support, they're struggling with staff right now. And so the conversation with Phoenix this summer was they too were looking for people. So I think it is certainly an area that we continue to explore next. We're just recognizing some of those realities that we're facing currently, but definitely all summers we do our best to make a partnership with them when possible.
And just a follow-up question, you probably want to answer this. In terms of like external versus internal staff working in our programming from our board and then other boards in the summertime, do you have numbers for that or?
Well, Lisa actually probably is a better.
I don't have numbers off the top of my head, but we had educators from anybody who applied was considered in.
Okay, but is it mainly RCDSB staff or is it?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, it is.
thank you.
But we did have external people and.
Yes.
Sorry.
We did.
The more the merrier.
Okay. Trustee Gannett.
Now, just an idea, because I know that staff in the summertime are really hard to come by. just thinking about community service hours that high school students need to get that 40 hours. I mean, I was involved with the peer helping program years ago. We started up at Fellows High School many, many years ago. And, you know, your future teachers, or your future social workers, you know, just would have to be planned in advance, but those students are there. Now, some of them do get busy, you know, as they get, you know, 16, 17, 18, but even some of the younger ones, you know, 14, 15-year-olds before they get into the real, you know, 30, 40-hour work week in the summer. That might be a resource that in each community, as you know, the principals of high schools and the guidance counselors might know of some of those students. And if they had some lead time, you know, have a little bit of a PR thing going on. And, you know, have you ever thought about doing this? Give back to your community in this fashion. And, you know, we will supply you with a letter of reference for your portfolio or whatever moving forward. I think some of the kids, they're out there. Just a matter of trying to find them. It's challenging.
We did have 2 volunteers from ADHS that worked at our AJ Charbonneau site. But again, we had trouble. And last year we opened it. I guess this year we did too. It was open to grade 12 students, the student assistant role, and we were still short. Short staff, but yes.
I don't know.
Get out there.
I don't know sort of legally where you would stand to have someone that's 15, you know, let's say instead of a senior high school student, because a lot of them get very, very busy. They're studying for university or whatever. They've got all kinds of reasons not to do this. But the younger ones, I don't know legally where that would stand, or maybe a letter of parental permission or something like that. But you know, these kids are so young that, you know, you get a real keener grade 10 student. You know, some of them might be able to do that, even just 1 or 2 in the community.
And they would be fine to volunteer under teacher supervision for sure.
And this incentive, and I don't know the particulars, but the incentive might be at the end of the line to get some community hours in. And I think it'd be a perfect situation. Anyway, thank you.
Well, high school credit.
I don't know about that. Yeah, community hours.
Co-op.
I don't know that one either.
The number of hours. but
Yeah,
That's why.
it's a lot of hours.
It's one of that, but the
I've got a question, choking here. Did you have a like a graduation day or a day where the parents would come in at the end, or?
Not sparse.
Yeah, sure.
So 4 years ago, I started 4 years ago with Lisa as well, and I was in a teaching role at Central in a primary classroom. And so that was pre-COVID, so that was in summer 2019. And so we did at the end, we put together like a celebration. They got to show all the robotics stuff because we were a pilot project for robotics that year. And they got to see the hot news, how it had progressed over the few weeks that we had and all the other things. But then I think just post-COVID, it just wasn't even on our radar this year to think to invite parents into the schools. But so it has happened in the past, but we didn't do it this year.
Well, like Trustee Adam, I was a little bit sad. I've been through quite a few of the grads at the end.
For your notebook.
Yeah,
And
sad
the
trustees.
parents over there, I tell you, and of course, the parents would come, like, talk to both of them. And they'd outnumber the kids, and the place would just be packed with them, and of course, there'd be all the goodies there. That was my favorite, but it wasn't. They appreciated what was offered and what was provided for their kids so much. And you're doing things for kids? Yes, of course you are. You're doing things for parents, you're doing things for families. So, you know, thank you very much for giving up your summers to do this. It's well worthwhile, and I'm sure you got just as much or more out of it than the kids did. So that's very good.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted a couple of points of clarification. Trustee Adam, we've got the PowerPoint through the trustees so that you'll have the information in case there's anything you didn't note. I wanted to also share, I think, some amazing suggestions. Thank you, Lisa, Jordan, and Joe, for all your efforts over a summer period. 2 comments from my perspective. The first one, this kind of a program reminds me of how much we can't take for granted the day-to-day work of educators in schools, especially coming out of a pandemic period where things like regular reading, bringing home your book, were interrupted because of some of the restrictive parameters we had and the impact it's had on a number of students, not only for early literacy, but I think early numeracy as well. And you just really Sean, in terms of what you demonstrated we can do to help boost up some of that support of learning to have them ready for their next grade and journey. The other one I would say is being gentle with ourselves in terms of coming out of the COVID era, hopefully, knock on wood, coming out of the COVID period, where a number of things have, to me, represented fatigue, volunteerism down, homestays for international students down, shortages in staff. So I think as time goes on, there may be a bounce back to getting back into some of the programs, the way that the interest, both from the student perspective, but also staff involvement, will happen over time. And the long-term view for us as an organization to really look at this as continuing the supports for students, because the pandemic has had such a differentiated impact on students and their families, and that we just need to continue this great work to fill in those pieces of learning along the way that happen to be lost. So I just think my gratitude to all of you as well for your incredible efforts at a time when at the end of the school year, everyone is so exhausted from the year. You just put so much time, effort, and energy into that. Thank you for coming to share with us today.
Welcome.
We've got one more question.
One more question.
I feel like after listening to Trustee Gannett's suggestion that something, I mean, I look at young kids helping the young IP hockey players. You know, I think we should bring that back sometime in the spring to discuss that further, because I think that could be a great support to the program. I don't want to lose his suggestion, because the more I think of it, the more I think it's a great idea. How do we do that?
You know, through you, Mr. Chair, we'll look at that as part of the community service hours. You know, as of grade 8, students can formally start to accumulate hours towards that. I think it's a great suggestion. I know Lisa's got some great ideas for senior staff to take back when we do the debrief of the summer learning, so that we don't lose those great suggestions, and we'll bring that forward. I also really appreciate the perspective that Lisa shared around, you know, projecting forward to next year, getting into some of those spring activities. You know, it may not be the leaving ceremony, the graduating class, because some of this applies to earlier students, but schools have spring activities where we could just sort of mention the fact that, hey, summer learning's coming up. Keep it in mind for your children and our staff, who already have a good sense of those learners they're working with. So absolutely.
Falls to me, my great pleasure to thank you on behalf of the Board of Trustees and everyone present for your excellent presentation. You know, you just grabbed our interest right at the start, and you kept it, and it's a wonderful program. It really is, and it's credit to people with such enthusiasm, as the three of you, that it really is a success. So thank you very much, and I have a little part of appreciation for each of you. Lisa, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Enjoy your year.
Thank you.
Great. Very interesting.
And that brings us to the next item on our agenda, committee reports to the board. I'll ask Vice Chair David Kaiser, Chairperson of Committee of the Whole, to present the Committee of the Whole open session report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to do the closed session report first, if that's okay, and then get to kind of flows better into the motions. So the Committee of the Whole met today, September 27th, 2022, discussed the following items again in closed session. The first item was the Finance and Resources Committee meeting closed session report. That was dated September 13th. And the Audit Committee meeting closed session report dated September 14th. There were no recommendations. There were information items. I move that the board receives the report, please.
Thank you. Chairperson Kaiser has moved the receipt of the Committee of the Whole closed session report, and I require a seconder to receive this particular report. Trustee Adder, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? And the motion to receive the Committee of the Whole closed session report is carried. And now we'll turn to the Committee of the Whole open session report.
Thank you very much. Now that I can talk a little bit about the open session. Again, the Committee of the Whole open session met today, September 27th, 2022. There were 5 items discussed in our session. The first item was the audit committee meeting open session report, which there's a motion following. The year-to-date financial status of the board. We had our financial manager and our superintendent, Jen Barnes, review our financial status, and we are, I think I can say at 99.1% of our budget expenditures for the 2021-22 year, which is outstanding work across the board. So we're, I think the short summary is we're in good financial shape again this year, and kudos to our superintendents for that. The third item was the secondary school review. There was I think if I can revert back to our elementary school review, we had several consultative sessions with our partners, the unions, the federation, and our teacher partners. We're doing the same thing for secondary. Obviously, a secondary review is a worthwhile adventure to see where, we take things like our French immersion program and things like that. It was quite a good report, and the dates are set for our fall consultative sessions for trustees and staff. I'm looking forward to that personally for my schools, and I'm sure trustees are all looking forward to their sessions. The fourth item was the board work plan and the work plan for staff, and there's a motion coming up to that in a moment. And the fifth was just sort of a summary from our director, a debrief on the school and system reopenings, and I think we had all the superintendents review their family of schools and how things were going in what our chair has referred to as sort of a first normal school year we've had in a few years. There were, in total, there were 3 recommendations. The first recommendation was from the audit committee, the open session report from September 14th. The 2 motions are, the first motion is that the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommends that the Renfrew County District School Board, A, receives the 21-22 annual report on the internal audit activities of the board, and B, receives the signed 21-22 regional internal audit team charter for information. I move the accept.
They not embedded in the report?
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you very much. Well, then the second motion was that the Renfrew County District School Board Audit Committee recommends for approval the 2022-2023 Regional Internal Audit Plan. And the third recommendation that came out of our session today was the board work plan and work plan for staff that I alluded to earlier, that the Renfrew County Board of Trustees approves the board work plan for the 2022-2023 school year. I move that the board adopts this report.
Thank you very much, Vice Chairperson Kaiser. Vice Chairperson Kaiser has moved the receipt of the committee of the whole open session report. I require a seconder to adopt the committee of the whole open session report. Seconded by Trustee Edge. Thank you. And any discussion?
Just one that I forgot to mention. I did mention it earlier. Just I think on behalf of the board, praise of thanks to our trustee Marjorie Adam, who has, as I mentioned earlier, I sat on this audit committee 1 year and did not necessarily enjoy it. She's done a great job chairing that committee for a number of years, and in terms of the reports we got today, just an outstanding job of sharing the information that needs to be shared with the board. And I commend Trustee Adam for chairing that committee for the last several years.
Thank you very much for that comment, Trustee Kaiser. I was on the audit committee for 2 years after coming back in 2014, and I have to say that the bar has been set so high for dealing with that particular committee by Trustee Adam. We're going to have a hard time finding people to be chair of that. You've done an extraordinary job. I've known you for a long time, and you were always been very thorough, and you kept that high standard in this particular committee. It's a difficult committee to follow, to understand, but it's a crucial one to the operation of this board. So thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you for those kind words. I'm off to the Olympics next year in the high jump event.
Okay, so any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? And the motion to adopt the committee of the whole open session report is carried. We'll move on to the Program of Student Achievement Committee open session report. Before I turn it over to Trustee Gadet, let's remind trustees that there was a report presented at the Program of Student Achievement Committee meeting on September 13th, 2022 that had a recommendation. However, we did not have a quorum. And so the recommendation was deferred to this board meeting. So, let's get it.
Thank you, Chair Morris. Yes, the Program and Student Achievement Committee met on Tuesday, September 13th, 2022 to discuss the following items. There were two. Firstly, an update on information and technology, communication technologies, the ITC action plan for 22 to 25. Just a brief overview of what went on here. Both Superintendent Ralph Cousineau and Doug Fiebig, our IT manager, always give a very, very thorough report. And just the purpose of the report was to inform the trustees of an overview of the Information and Communication Technologies Annual Action Plan for the school year. Just a couple of things that I noted, and that were there's a focus on cybersecurity. And I'm talking to Doug, our IT guy. I have a lot of respect for Doug, and he basically said it's not if we're going to get hacked, it's when. So the team, it sounds like Doug's really on this, and they've actually hired an employee that's going to be fully trained. I believe I've got his name here somewhere. It's Andrew Lebert, if that's how you pronounce it. And Andrew's really keen to get going on his new position. There's been a number of network modernization programs that were discussed during this session. And I just wanted to mention that I highlighted this part. The plan increases the number of devices available to students, helping to ensure that there is greater equity and access for students. And so far in this particular plan, Doug mentioned that there's been 3 high schools and 4 elementary schools done so far. So they're well on their way to completing this. The other thing that I really like about their reports is that with the action plan, they also give more specifics to the trustees, and they also give, basically dates and timelines and when things are going to happen. So it's a very structured report. And on behalf of my fellow trustees, as we've spoken about this, we really appreciate that information. It's going above and beyond. And by the time they get done giving us these reports, we usually don't have a lot of questions because they've answered most of them. That's what I found during these reports. So that's the first part of our session. The second part was the program and or service review cycle for the 22-23 school year, year 2 of implementation. And Director Buffoni supplied information on that topic to us. And the purpose of this was to, again, give the Board of Trustees a renewed plan for the cycle to review the programs and services offered by the district as part of the current multi-year strategic plan, including the sound stewardship of resources, human, material, and physical, for the effectiveness and efficiency operation of the organization. And again, we alluded to this when Tammy Hoffman was here. I mean, our board's in pretty good shape financially, especially considering the restraints that a lot of boards are under right now. So the housekeeping at the back end has been very, very thorough and very, very good. Just mention one last thing. There is one recommendation that's put forward on this report. And the recommendation is as follows. That the Renfrew County District School Board approve the program and or services review cycle for the 22-23 school year. And this is on item 2. I move that the board receive this report.
Okay, we'll deal with the recommendation. We didn't have quorum,
Okay.
so we have to accept or reject the recommendation first. I need a mover and a seconder then to approve that recommendation that Trustee Gannett has read, that the Renfrew County District School Board approve the program and or service review cycle for the 2022-2023 school year. We have a mover and a seconder. Okay, Trustee Adam.
Mike already moved it, right? So we just need a second.
Mike moved it.
Yeah,
I just second
I
it.
move.
Although it's going back into the committee and he's asking for a mover and a seconder. Rather then we go into accepting the report of the committee.
Okay.
Trustee Adam and Trustee Humphries, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, and the motion that the Renfrew County District School Board approve the program and or service review cycle for the 2022-2023 school year is carried. And this report is now approved to be added to the Program and Student Achievement Committee open session report for September 13th, 2022. And now,
I move that the board adopt this report.
okay, thank you very much. Trustee Gannett has moved this, the adoption of this report, and I require a seconder. I have the Trustee Humphries, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Thank you, and the motion to adopt the Program and Student Achievement Committee open session report is carried. And now we'll move on to the Finance and Resources open session report. And I'll ask Trustee Susan Humphries, the acting chair for that particular committee, to present the Finance and Resources Committee open session report for September 13th, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the meeting on September the 13th, the Finance and Resources Committee, we had two items to discuss, and I'm just going to mention a couple of things in each one. The first item was a review of the summer capital projects. So Manager Bill Murray came in to give us a good overview of all of the wonderful things that happen in schools and how they worked away at getting all those things completed and well underway in some cases. But the four things, I kind of picked out four things that I thought would be particularly of interest. And one we actually heard a little bit more about today, the Herman Street childcare extension, expansion. It's looking like it's 98% complete now, or 97, 98, somewhere in that range. So hopefully it won't be too long before there can be a grand opening and we can get some children in that childcare center. The second one that I thought was of interest for a lot of us too is around the continuing education piece. We do know that the Petawawa site was moved into Pineview. And so I believe that all of our Con Ed sites now are located in our own schools, which I think will be an advantage. There was new flooring put in at ADHS Library and the Eganville Library and probably lots of other places, but that was certainly a benefit. And he did mention that the flooring is not does not require polishing anymore. Like it's a new kind of flooring that's kind of easy care, and that will be a benefit. And then finally, he mentioned that the accessibility at ADHS has greatly been improved so that students and teachers and parents can now actually access that school more easily and appropriately than they could before. The second item that we discussed at the Finance and Resources Committee was around the annual action plan for strategic communications and community/public relations. So Hannah McMillan provided a very good overview of the thinking of going forward around communications, and there's lots of things going on there. The three that came to mind that I thought were particularly of interest was that we have a plan in place to do some video segments with Matt LeMay, who some of you I know are aware of, and some of the work that he's done. So we're looking forward to seeing how that evolves over the next year or so. The second area is that we are going to be moving hopefully into phase 2 of our website updates so that all of the schools will get their we'll be working on having their websites updated as well. And then finally, as most of you know, we do have digital signage in the majority of our schools, and hopefully this year we will finish up with that digital signage as well. And there are many other things in that report, but those are the three that I wanted to particularly highlight. There were no recommendations made. This was for information only, so I move the receipt of this report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, could I have a seconder to receive this report? Trustee Gannett, any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. The motion to receive the Financial Resources Committee open session report is carried. And next we have the SEAC Committee, the Special Education Advisory Committee. And we rarely ever have a committee not have a quorum. And here we have two in a month. So we do not have a report to submit to the board from SEAC this month because we did not have a quorum. So I'm sure we'll see that again for another year. At this time, I'd like to ask our director for the director's monthly update.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Now that the school year is well underway, I'd like to share a few updates related to the return to schools and workplaces across the system. To begin, in alignment with the advice provided by the Chief Medical Officer of Health, as outlined in the guideline for the 2022-2023 health and safety measures in schools, a number of health and safety requirements continue from the previous school year, and that includes optional masking for students, staff, and visitors in schools, school board offices, as well as on student transportation, except in cases where staff are required to perform aerosol-generating medical procedures or in the same room when an AGMP is being performed, for instance, where N95 respiratory masks, fit tested, and eye protection for staff are required. The ongoing procurement of hand sanitizer for all school boards throughout the provincial government's pandemic supply chain on an as-needs basis. So it's different this year compared to past years, as we used to get a regular order, essentially based on our enrollment and our numbers of staff. This year, we're reaching out again through Superintendent Barnes and her leadership when we need a refill, basically, or stocks are getting a little bit lower, they will send them our way. And the continuation of funding for enhanced cleaning standards, temporary additional staffing requirements, as well as ventilation and filtration improvements at all sites are well underway and continuing. My thanks to our staff for that work. Also, in coherence with the poise and professionalism of our staff, the startup has proceeded smoothly for all schools and central departments, with a few ongoing challenges and our opportunities related to class configuration, and that's a good challenge to have. Our enrollment is again up this school year, and so we're having to reconfigure based on that, which is a positive sign for the district and a good problem to have. As well as staff shortages, as has been mentioned previously in our committee of the whole for coverage requirements, which is a continued piece that Superintendent Poirier and her team and human resources are working their way through, and student transportation. Again, some shortages in our drivers and a few challenges with our routes, but we're working through all of those that are really commonplace year by year for the start of a new school year. My sincerest gratitude once again to all student, staff, and school communities for their care and commitment, focus and flexibility in ensuring we're up and running in as normalized the start of a school year as we've had in the past 3 years. I'm excited to share that the district will be engaging in all secondary staff as well as educators for adult and continuing education in a series of consultative sessions through the Rethink at Secondary initiative. My thanks to Superintendents Cousineau and Riddell for the work that's happening here. The first session's taking place for our adult and continuing education staff on Thursday, September 29th, this Thursday here in the board office. The sessions across all 7 secondary sites will take place over the months of October and November, in essence, between a Canadian and American Thanksgiving. The feedback and input received and gathered will inform recommendations brought forth by the Secondary School Review Committee to the Board of Trustees all of 2022 and the winter of 2023. And for the Board of Trustees, much like was the case with the elementary school review, from those recommendations, we'll form a transition committee that will help oversee the operationalization of whatever decisions are made by the Board of Trustees. And last but not least, as mentioned by Superintendent Cousineau earlier, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, September 30th, as an integral part of the district's efforts to address the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Schools and central departments will engage in a number of activities related to Indigenous education, Indigenous ways of knowing and learning, including the raising of the Every Child Matters flags on site in every school and central building. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Director of the Food. And I'll now deliver my chair's update. Finally, we are beginning a new school year that's relatively normal. Most students have returned to in-person learning at our schools, while a small number have opted for online learning. Our schools are humming with activity after a smooth startup. Normal classroom activities are well underway. Sports and other school clubs are operating, and the vibrant life of schools has returned. Thank you to all students, families, and staff for all their hard work and sacrifices over the past 2.5 years during the pandemic. While we still have to keep our guard up, we appear to be entering a new normal in the life of our schools. Amidst all the purposeful activity in our classrooms and schools, the board is continuing to work hard on new initiatives in order to meet the changing needs of our students as they prepare for their future lives. About 3 years ago, we began the process of a secondary school review, looking at what we were doing as well as why and how we were doing it. The pandemic necessitated that this review be put on hold. We now are putting the review back on track as a priority. It'll be a busy fall as we hold consultations with all 7 of our high schools, as well as our continuing education department. This process will help us redefine what we do in our secondary schools as we assist families in preparing their young people for an uncertain and changing future. And now I'll ask our 2 student trustees, one in person and the other up on the screen,
Yeah.
for their report.
So over the last few weeks, we've been getting back into the groove of things since school began on the 6th. Since then, we've been getting ready for our roles within the board, for our student senate, and also within OPSBA. On September 17th, I had an executive meeting in Toronto, which we went over some strategic planning for the year, some planning that's left for FGM, which takes place the 20th, the 23rd of October. And we also had a meeting with Minister of Education, Stephen Lees. During that meeting, some topics were discussed, which included students return back to school, our shared priorities as an organization, and building a partnership with student involvement moving forward. At our upcoming Senate meeting, we plan to have a day filled with vision planning, electing different positions within the team, some discussion on the secondary school review, along with some activities, get to know each other. Passing it to Ava.
Okay, can everyone hear me this time?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as school started back up, we've been taking some time to not only focus on being students, but also planning on how to be successful in our roles for the upcoming school year. I've had 2 public board council meetings since my term as Southern Ontario Regional Representative began. Both meetings were extremely productive. As a team, we are working on creating goals for this year as well as many years to come. We are making sure to put students' needs first and recognize feedback that has been given. As for Student Senate, Taylor and I have been dedicating our time to plan a fun yet educational day for our senators. Overall, my first few weeks as student trustee have been spent learning from Taylor and being alongside all different kinds of people, all extremely kind and understanding.
Thank you very much, Taylor and Ava. Really appreciate the report, all the hard work you do, and it is a lot of work. Really recognize that. And I'll ask trustees Adam and Humphrey.
Trustee Edge had a question.
I just have a question. Did they change the regions for Student Trustee Association? Because when I was student trustee, I was Eastern Regional Rep, and our board is part of the Eastern Region. So I'm just shocked to hear Southern Ontario.
So because of the people who applied, it was really hard getting people to come. I saw that process within each of the public board council and Catholic board council.
Okay.
So they kind of just had to have people represent different.
Step in, kind of.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was just curious if they got rid of some regions or whatever. Or
All
if
regions are gotten rid of. They're just.
they just fill in roles in other spots.
So that's to my understanding,
Okay.
but yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. There's always a reason.
Yeah.
I think that. Oh, sorry.
Just in regards to a quick comment about the reports, both the director's report and the chair's report referred to, schools being back to normal. And I think personally, you know, the best thing for the mental health and well-being of our students is a normal school life. And I'm very thankful, and I'm sure most people are, that our schools are not only open to our students, but open to the community as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that, that comment. I'm sure all our parents would echo that. And now I'll ask trustees, Adam Humphries, if they have anything from OPSBA.
I'll start, and then if Marjorie has anything to add, she was certainly open to that. Just to let you know that the Executive Council did meet at the end of August around a plan for a planning day, which was quite interesting. I think you're all aware that the Executive Director for OPSBA is retiring the end of this year, Rusty Hick. And so we are beginning the process now of doing a search. We have we're working with a consultant, Promeus, actually, to do that. So we're just at the stage now of putting together the job advertisement and the background around that. But they have quite an aggressive hope of getting somebody on board by the end of December. So keeping our fingers crossed. So we're working on that. We're also working on a process for a new strategic plan for OPSBA. So that will be brought forward at the meeting this week. And of course, planning again for an advocacy day at the end of November. We haven't been able to do that for a couple of years because of the pandemic, but that's been quite successful over the years, where a number of OPSBA board of directors do meet with a variety of MPs and other staff, MPPs rather, and other staff at Queen's Park around advocacy for education in Ontario. So that is underway, is getting planned. There is a board of directors meeting this Friday and Saturday, and Trustee Adam and I are both planning to attend that event. So I thought you might also be interested in the lay of the land across the province regarding the numbers of trustees running for office. I mean, we sort of forget here that most of us were acclaimed, so we don't have to be in campaign mode, right? But there are a lot of trustees across the province who are in a significant campaign mode right now. And so I thought you might be a bit interested in that. And I know CBC's been running some articles or some talk shows about municipalities and how many mayors were acclaimed and how they're having some challenge getting new people as well. So just to give you a sense, this, I know I'm only talking about the English public boards. That's all the data that I have. I don't have the data on the other ones, but there are 317 positions across the province. And in 2018, there were 881 who ran and 78 were acclaimed. And in 2022, we have 862 running with 66 acclaimed. So the numbers are down a bit in both running, but also in acclamations. So for your interest in the East region, we only have 5 boards in the East region. So just to give you a sense, Limestone, they have 9 positions. There are 18 running for 9 positions, but 4 haven't been acclaimed. So there are actually 18 running for 5 positions. In Hastings Prince Edward, again, they have 9 positions. Again, 18 are running, 4 are acclaimed. Ottawa Carleton, there are 12 positions, 41 are running, and no acclamations in Ottawa Carleton. So that's going to be a busy place. Renfrew, we have 8 positions, as you know, 9 running and 7 acclaimed. So we only have a competition for Arm Prior. And in Upper Canada, there are 10 positions, 23 running, and 2 acclaimed. So there are lots of people in the East region that are pretty heavily into campaign mode. So that's all that I had. Marjorie, did you have anything you wanted to add at this point? Okay, great. So that's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And correspondence, we have none to bring to the board. Other business, do any trustees have any other business?
Just more of a comment when we talked to, when Susan was mentioning about the trustees and so many being acclaimed and so many running. Just wanted to mention that somebody who I have a lot of respect for, who's running in Laurentian Valley, is Wendy Hewitt, who's one of our past chairs. She's going for council in Laurentian Valley. So I just thought for those of you who don't know, she's throwing her hat in the ring and going to see what happens. So just thought I'd make that a notation.
An excellent trustee, an excellent chair, and I'm sure she'll make an excellent counselor for Laurentian Valley. So any other business? Before we get to adjournment, This Friday is Orange Shirt Day. So this Friday, September 30th. The day designated to commemorate the children who survived the residential school experience. Remember those who did not, to honor the healing journey for these families and commit to the ongoing process of reconciliation. We extend our thanks to the efforts of Superintendent Cousineau and the Indigenous team. We also certainly extend our thanks to Trustee Adam for all of her work on the Indigenous Education Committee. And the district has decided to fly the Every Child Matters flag at all RCDSB school and administration sites all this week. And now I'll ask for a motion for adjournment. Trustee Adam and Trustee Edge, all those in favor? Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.